Township Trustee meeting for June the 4th, 2020. As you can see tonight, we are practicing suggestions put forward by the COVID-19 principles of social distancing. I know when you walked in tonight, your temperature was taken by Mr. Cullums. We've been sanitizing the room. We had some meetings earlier this evening. We sanitized the place. There's plenty of liquid if you need to. Rub your hands, take care of your hands, and we have masks if you need masks. It's good to be back in this room. It's been a wait. Of course, you can see this now. We Zoomed the meetings before. You can see it now on social media and on our website. Our invocation this evening will be read by our administrator, Mr. Firework. If you would stand for that, please, if you're able.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're gathered here this evening for one of our local government meetings. All over the fabulous planet that you made for us, your children have gathered to form governments. We've been blessed by you in our country to have the longest surviving government in history. The republic we call the United States of America was founded on principles that come from you. We are grateful to be blessed that you granted the wisdom to our forefathers to establish this government based around basic human rights. And those rights, as given by you, and can only be taken by you. We pray that our elected officials and public servants remember the founding principles of our country. As always, we ask you to hold our first responders in your loving hands. Every day they see things that should be unseen, they hear things that should be unheard, and they need your strength to continue to unselfishly serve us. That strength can only come from you. Also, Heavenly Father, would you please embrace our elected officials as they make the hard decisions in the public forum of ever-competing ideas. We ask all of this in our Savior's name as we proclaim, Amen.
Please remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we're going to ask our fiscal officer, Mr. Porter, to please call the roll.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Here.
Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Weedman?
Present.
And Mr. Porter, you also have the honor to tell us about the bills and the receipts that you have.
Yes, we had receipts of $884,135.25, disbursements of $450,758.50. A complete list of all receipts and disbursements is available in your packet and in the office for your review.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
And now we have a presentation of Eagle Scout candidate. Harrison Painter.
Hello, I'm Harrison Painter. I am looking to be an Eagle Scout, and I am proposing to build a few back boxes. Next slide, please. The bat boxes are beneficial to the community because they prevent mosquitoes and other things like that. They keep bats out of people's attics, and they produce guano, which is their excrement, which is a fantastic fertilizer for crops. I will be using bat box kits that are supplied by a couple of websites that are approved by the BCI, and this one is a single chamber, but we will be using dual chamber bat houses. They will be painted dark colors, so they won't stand out, and they will absorb sunlight. Most of them will probably be mounted on poles, so I can position them wherever I wish. But some of them can also be mounted on trees or sides of buildings if they are in the correct position. I like to cluster them together. That way, the bats can move from one house to another easily. The first place that I would like to put them is Bechtold Park, the northern area, because there's a body of water and open area facing the south, so they can absorb. So the houses can absorb sunlight to keep them warm in the winter. And it's not too close to people, so there will be low traffic. The second area is right outside, because there's also a body of water. It's slightly less secluded, but there is a bat house that I saw earlier that is already here. So putting them together makes it more likely that they will be inhabited. If there are any other places that I didn't find that will be suitable, that would be nice to have your input on that. Other than that, I just need permission to install them, and I do not need any money.
That's always really good to hear.
Thank you.
Mr. Ward, do you want to weigh in on this?
I think it's fantastic. Do we have to have a motion or something?
Deepak, do we need a
Any
motion?
questions for Harrison?
I just have a couple questions. Hi, my name is Deepak Desai. I'm the law director for Sycamore Township. This is not my usual look, but you will pardon me given the circumstances. So as far as maintenance on the bat houses, who will continue to maintain them through the years?
They don't need any maintenance. They will, unless they fall off, then they don't need to be maintained at all.
In that event, would you or somebody from the Boy Scouts come back and replace them, or what's the plan with that?
If it falls off, they're not going to be using it, so it doesn't really need to be replaced. Because even if I put another house back up, they probably wouldn't go back there.
And how many are you planning on putting up?
About 10.
10?
A few in each area, if possible.
Okay. And how will you access? It looks like they have to go up pretty high. How will you accomplish that?
Ladders.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
My name's Rob Painter. I'm the Scoutmaster and Harrison's father. I'm going to whisper in his ear the answer.
They will be attached to the pole before the pole is put up.
So you're actually going to utilize new poles and put them up?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously the township would want to have some input on where those poles are located, especially if they would go into a park. Obviously, we're always concerned about liability, Mr. Painter. You know, if the trustees are agreeable to doing it, and I have all kinds of bats in my backyard, and I love it because you're right, it really reduces the mosquitoes. We would want, you know, obviously a release signed so that if anything were to happen, the township would not be held liable. I'm a lawyer. These are the type of things I think about, so, you know, understand. Yeah, so.
You probably thought he was Batman since he's wearing a mask, though.
If it was black, it would be better, right? There you go. You know, we'd also probably put in that document an indemnification that if there was any damage to property or individuals, you know, we'd want that to be covered. So, you know, there would be a document that we'd have to put together if the Board of Trustees are so inclined to move forward with it. The one thing I might suggest to the board, again, I mean, it sounds like a great idea, is to maybe get some more specifics on it. You know, what exactly are the poles going to look like? How high are the poles going to be? Where exactly are they going to be placed, either under option A or option B? You know, those are the type of details that I think would be helpful to the board.
You want to talk about one point of contact?
I think this was just an introductory proposal. I think, you know, they're willing to work with township staff to to iron out the specifics.
Okay.
We'd be happy to look at any document I put forward. Something else we'd like to ask for is maybe one point of contact, who maybe somebody from the township, whether it's Skylar or Mr. Kellums, that could be our one source of contact that we could work out the details with. We'd enjoy that.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think, if this is a preliminary, proposal, sounds like, there's some interest in doing it and working with your son and the Boy Scouts to do that. I would maybe suggest that the board allow the detailed plans to be put forth, and then you'll know exactly what you're motioning to approve or not at that point. Ray, do you have a preference on point of contact?
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I mean, it's going in township parks,
Yeah.
so
So
I'm happy
myself
to
and my
make
staff.
introductions.
And as
So,
a Eagle Scout from Troop 18, I'd be happy to.
there we go.
You were an Eagle Scout?
Yes, sir.
You were.
From the same troop he's from.
Very good.
That's terrific.
You are an
That's
Eagle
really good.
Scout.
I am an
Yes.
Eagle Scout.
And where does your troop meet?
We meet at St. Xavier, Deer Park area.
Yeah, very good.
Actually, what's your timeline on this? Is it July, end of July, or?
As soon as possible, probably late June.
So we have, on the 16th, if I'm not mistaken, we have a workshop meeting, is that right? So if you could, get something to us next week, that would allow us to, cull through it and then be prepared on the 16th to move forward with a motion.
Mr. Desai, you will also prepare a document for indemnification.
I will.
On liability. Thank you.
Tracy, do you have any concerns about this? I assume not. It sounds like a good idea. Okay, and there's no zoning concern, I assume, right?
No, not at all.
Very good. Do we, let me just ask my fellow trustees, do we need to be the ones to approve the final design, or should we consider delegating that to Mr. Kellums as part of his responsibilities with the park to be consistent with those things?
I would delegate to Mr. Kellums.
I would too.
He's an Eagle Scout,
Yep.
yes.
If that's the case, we could, I think,
Absolutely.
approve it now if we wanted to do so, unless either of you two gentlemen caution otherwise.
I'm always going to caution otherwise, right? I'd like to see the full plan and the specifics I mentioned. And it sounds like that would still work with your timing if we could get this before the board on June 16th. So I'd recommend waiting till then.
Does that work okay? Okay.
That works.
Very impressive. Very
Great job,
nice.
thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, next item, public comments, and
Yeah.
Mr. Warwick, our administrator, has the floor.
Good job, Harrison, handling our attorney. Are you going to go to law school by any chance? Okay. Curious. We asked for reservations for public comments, and so when I call you up, you have to stand on this X, and please just don't pay any attention to the boom. Address the board, not the microphone, but do stay on the X because we want to make sure we get you in the camera shot. We're having a little trouble with our live stream this evening, so we want to make sure we get you on the record. The first person tonight is Mr. Standish Fortin, and I would ask the board if you would please suspend the 4-minute rule for him. He had originally asked to be on the agenda. There was some confusion about which meeting it was going to be, so he may need a little more than 4 minutes, and if I'd just ask if maybe you'd give him a little more time if he needs it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Fine with me.
That's good.
You want to just do a quick motion for a voice vote? Motion to suspend the 4-minute rule?
I'll make a motion to suspend the 4-minute rule.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Do you need a podium or something to put your laptop on? No? Oh, Ray is saying no.
Against the
Okay.
rules.
He's my podium.
No, I'll hold it.
Dr. Acton said no, sorry.
Yeah. Standish Fortin, 12137 Macaulay Road in the northern section of Sycamore Township. Appreciate the time. It's good to see everybody out and about. We're finally getting back to our lives, which is sorely needed for many people. I'm here today because I want to make sure that our nation's birthday and our independence is remembered. And I've done an inordinate amount of work, as I sometimes do for my community, to hopefully have a fireworks presentation on July 4th. So I do have a PowerPoint that I want to go over first. This is, if you could go back real quick.
Yeah.
Little understanding on the construct of this. I created a nonprofit called Red, White, and Boom Sycamore. If only I could spell, evidently. Apologize, that was a little rushed. It's a nonprofit. It's not a 501c3. We do not anticipate keeping any funds in it. It's simply a conduit to put forth and organize this event. I have several people that have already volunteered to be on the board, including an accountant who will handle all the financial matters. My background in community involvement is I've put on well over 10 events. Some of those events have had annual budgets over $30,000. Some of those events have had attendees over 10,000 people. The anticipation of this event is smaller than that. I know there has been some concern regarding the time frame of this. I want to, at least try and dispel some of those concerns with my background of organizing events, that this is a small event, at least this year. It could definitely turn into something larger down the road, but we'll see. Thank you, Skylar. So if you didn't know, July 4th is when the Declaration of Independence was officially proclaimed, and that's why we have our celebration on July 4th. I have gone around in my time to different companies in our community, mostly up north in the Sycamore Township area, and we do have quite a few businesses up there that are interested in being community partners. I imagine that this list could grow to 30 companies very easily. I put the brakes on in attempting to secure additional partners when I understood that there were some concerns about the event. I'll go over some additional things, which is good news as to why I have little concerns for that going forward, but ultimately that's your decisions. These are just some of the community partners that have vocalized support, and I do have some written letters that I've forwarded to Mr. Work already. Thank you, Skylar. The basic concept is to have food trucks, a beer garden, Sons of American Revolution demonstrations, and the world famous Rosie's Fireworks. Fireworks would be at 10, and the initial grouping, I guess, or opening for social gathering would be at 6 p.m. I do want to notate that in my research, and thank you, Gloria, for bringing some of these matters to all of our attention, that our cemetery is in need of some attention. In my research, I discovered in the Ohio Revised Code, thank you, Mr. James, for teaching me the ins and outs of that, that the township can establish a cemetery endowment fund. I do not believe that our township has a cemetery endowment fund. My proposal is that the proceeds from the beer garden would be split basically 3 ways if needed. If we have enough sponsors, Red, White, and Boom Sycamore would not need to cover any expenses, and then it would just be 2 ways between the Sons of American Revolution and to create or fund a cemetery endowment fund. There are many things that need to be addressed at the cemetery, and that seems a perfect way to fund it. Skylar? For those of you who haven't been over to our cemetery, we do have, I believe, 5 Revolutionary soldiers buried in our cemetery. Currently, there's only 1 gravestone. There's 4 others that will be moved over soon, is what I've been told. So the township does have Revolutionary history. You can skip that one. We've already gone over that. One of the concerns I heard from some of the discussion on Tuesday's workshop was concern for the damage to the potential damage to the fields. We'll have Joe Rossi speak to the firework component, but as you can see, and this is Bechtold Park, where there's been events where 10,000 people have been at. The field is not damaged, looks beautiful, even has lovely stripes. So I have no concerns about the wear and tear, because there'll be just a couple hours of people being on it. And for those that are not familiar with the proposal is that at McDaniels Park we would have fireworks. And if my lighter will work, this parking lot here is where we would have the food trucks lined up. We would have a beer garden here, The rest of this lot would be reserved for handicap parking only. The lot over here would be for Rosie's Fireworks and volunteers. And then I have already gotten verbal confirmation. I have written confirmation for parking lot 1, and this is actually bigger than what's displayed here. I have verbal confirmation on parking lot 3. I am waiting on lot 4. Lot 4 is open automatically until 10 anyways. They just have to keep it open a little longer. And I am waiting on confirmation of parking lot 2, which is, I think, Kemper Point is the name of that property.
Kemper Point? Is that what you said, Kemper Point?
I think it's called
Yeah,
Kemper
I think
Point.
it is.
And the township actually owns a parking lot in the front of that. So I believe there is sufficient parking. In addition, I have spoken with the sheriff's department and clarified if we wish to, we could post all along these streets here, no parking for a certain period of time to ensure that the local residents are not inundated with any vehicles. That is not the sheriff's department's decision. It is, and Tracy, you could probably speak to this better than I, the township can do it and the township can put the signs up.
That's correct.
That's correct, okay, good. The other concerns is with this transportation, if you go to the next slide, my plan, and I have spoken with the Hamilton County Department of, or Engineers Office, shutting down School Road going eastbound. And that would allow for people to park at lots 3 and 4, as we're calling it, and walk safely down to McDaniels Park. As you all know, I have been trying to get sidewalks in this particular area for about a year now. That's in process, but obviously they won't be in place. Maybe in the future we wouldn't even have to shut down School Road. But I've tried to think through and consult with safety officials, for lack of a better description, on a methodology so that people can actually get to the park safely if they are driving to it and parking. Skylar? If you were not aware, June 2nd, probably about the time you guys were in your workshop, maybe in the afternoon, there was a Responsible Restart Ohio publication put out, which actually took effect on June 2nd, so this is already in effect, and it is for fair boards. I did talk to the Hamilton County head of health, their health department, Jeremy Hessel, I believe his name is. He said he was not even familiar with this, to give you an idea of how overwhelmed they are. He suggested that he would review it, that I continue to move forward in this process, but I wanted to notate that in this guidance, it says, in the event fair boards decide that they can safely host attraction concessions and exhibitors, they must comply with the applicable sector guidelines, including the following. And the reason I reference this is for food concessions, which it's pretty basic, 6 feet distancing that everybody's heard over and over. Skylar? And then today, the governor announced orders to reopen certain facilities. I won't go through the entire part, but effective June 10th, playgrounds and public recreation centers will be open. The intention is to simply post signs at all of the access points to the park to maintain social distancing, to maintain compliance, for lack of a better description, with the recommendations. Skylar? And for those of you that did not know why fireworks happen, you should. According to John Adams, in a letter to his wife, he said, "I'm apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, bonfires, fires, and illuminations from one end of the continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore." And that's why we have 4th of July fireworks.
I think he also died on that day, didn't he?
And George Washington.
Yep, both of them.
Yep. Skylar?
Jefferson, actually.
Was it Jefferson?
Jefferson, that's right. That's right.
It was Jefferson and Adams, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And
That's it.
that's it. Let's see, I just want to make sure I addressed I think I've covered everything. I do have some of the partners here key partners for the event, if I could allow them to speak as well. So, Joe Rossi.
Joe Rossi, 5518 Chancellor Lane, Hamilton Township. Standish asked me to come to address any concerns directly related to the fireworks and how that process moves, and what we're also hearing from other communities as to how they're moving forward with their fireworks displays. Just about all of our clients in Warren County are moving forward with fireworks, Lebanon, Mason, Kings Island, whether they're open or not. The communities feel it's important to at least have some sort of celebration. Some of the communities are encouraging people to stay home or in parking lots. Some of these communities can accommodate that. But that's more or less what we're seeing. So my question is to you, do you have any questions for me as it relates to the fireworks display?
Can you just bring that map up? So the fireworks are going to be shot from inside this blue circle?
Pretty much the center of that circle. What that indicates is a radius of a minimum safe distance, which is determined by the diameter of product that we shoot.
So outside that circle, inside that circle, no one's allowed to go, correct?
Correct.
So outside that circle, looks like it would be a pretty heavy concentration of people if this is successful, correct?
There could be.
Yeah. How do you cordon off that circle?
That can be cordoned off with caution tape. It could be snow fencing. Really, whatever fire department requires us to do.
I don't have any other questions.
You said other communities are finding ways to do this, Kings Island being one, perhaps.
Yep.
Kings Island has a giant parking lot, though, and the other communities do, too. I know Sims and Loveland together announced today that they were planning to do fireworks shut off for viewing from parking lots at churches and parks in the area and people's homes. But
Right.
And I assume you're involved with that, too?
Yes.
Are there any communities who have been able to approve doing this with gatherings where people will be out of their cars gathered in parks watching it?
What we've heard from, so for instance, Lebanon, is they're encouraging people to gather in parking lots around the area, around Pioneer, or not Pioneer, Colonial Park, isn't it? Colonial Park. The park itself isn't open, so they're allowing people, though, to gather in other areas. I don't believe they're controlling how they gather or controlling what they do. They're just not providing any kind of mechanism for it.
Are they encouraging them to come to an area, though, walk to it, and then have...
I believe so, yes.
And have food trucks and
Yeah,
possessions?
we're doing a demo to Monday night in Wyoming. They're looking at certain areas. They're going to be placing people around the community in certain streets and at the high school and other areas to see where could we see this from so we can push people to those areas. I don't know if they're pushing out any concessions or anything like that. I do know that we have pushed the program out to subdivisions. Most newer subdivisions have green space. There's been about 5 to 7 of them that are on board with a small show in their common area. They're bringing in food trucks. They're looking at the grassy areas where they have that they can accommodate people from the neighborhood. I'm hearing crowds of maybe 300 or 400. So that's how they're handling theirs.
How's the insurance situation? How are you insured? Are you insured for this?
Absolutely. Our standard liability is $10 million, of which there is a $9 million aggregate. And I can provide a copy of that for review if you need.
I'm less concerned with your ability to support the insurance part of it, and I'm more concerned about the ability to put people in this park outside of that blue circle and still follow the required social distancing and however we have. What are we limited to now? 300?
300 for a wedding.
only for a
but
wedding. That's only for a wedding?
Otherwise, the 10-person gathering limit is still in effect unless that changed today and has that.
I don't know if it has or not.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's some new announcements coming out tomorrow. They were expecting attractions and amusement parks to be released today.
As referenced in the county fair, the 10-person restriction was in reference to attendees in line
entire event did not have that restriction. Obviously, you can't have a county fair of 10 people.
I think the big fear is the unknown factor. We don't know. People have been so much, isolated, and now all of a sudden we have a chance to go out, and all our neighbors around here have canceled their events. So this is going to be a really big happening. And I just wonder if we can control the crowd.
And that's my fear too. We may well be the only game in town, or nearly the only game in town. I'm happy to hear other areas are finding ways to do it when they have the parking lots to accommodate it. I know Madeira in the last week canceled their Independence Day celebration because of that same worry. They thought they'd be the only big event in the area, and they would be logistically overwhelmed.
Yeah, Indian Hills meeting tonight, I believe, to discuss what they're going to do moving forward.
Are they? And I will say, I would love to see something like this happen. This is a privately sponsored event, not a township event, but I see a lot of hurdles and a lot of headaches that it creates for the township and the residents around where it may happen, who are going to bear the brunt of some of this too, especially if there's a crushing crowd that shows up, because everyone in Cincinnati, Norwood, over Fairfield, whatever, says, where are the fireworks to go to? Oh, they're in Sycamore. And they all show up, and you have an overwhelming crowd, you have health orders still in place, and people violating it, and we have the complicating factor now of people are very concerned about the George Floyd death. They've been taking any opportunity they can to demonstrate, mostly peacefully, but bad people have come out in some of that too. We're looking at a month out from now. That may have all subsided by then, but that's another concern now that I hadn't even worried about when I first heard about this. But that's something else to think about too, and we don't know where things are going with the state. Again, this is not a township-sponsored event anyway, but it's something we're being asked to make our park and other areas available to, and to help facilitate. I think the no parking signs would be something we'd certainly want to ask for in the neighborhoods if this event were to go forward. But I know Mr. Fortin's put a lot of effort into this too, and is working hard to try to make it happen, and has some very detailed plans about it, and he's worked very hard on that and done a good job with that, I think. I know he's got a contract with your organization he's going to have to sign coming up very soon.
If it comes to that.
Well,
and maybe Mr. Fortin could speak to some of the issues surrounding the event gathering
Sure.
and all of those things. I was just, my purpose here was to give you any information as related to the fireworks specifically.
Sure.
What happens inside that blue circle, and offer what I'm hearing from other communities.
Well, a few other questions about that. One,
Sure.
where I was going though, and that is, if Mr. Fortin signs a contract with you and then the county health department says you can't do this a few days before the event is planned, I assume he's out the money, right? The
No,
contract.
there's a deposit. We don't look for a lot of it. We've got to put some footwork into it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to make Mr. Fortin pay the entire amount. We don't operate like that.
Okay.
But there is a small consideration.
And one more second. My other question, looking at the map here, I know some communities have found other ways to do this, like Sims and Loveland, I think, are having you aim higher. Is that right? City of
really.
Hamilton.
It's what they're doing is spreading it out to two different locations.
Okay.
So we have this park in Sims, and then we have one site potentially at the high school, or it may end up back down at the same park we usually shoot in. So it's spreading it out. You can't really shoot them higher.
Okay.
There's larger product that goes higher, but you really can't.
Not in
You're
the
bound by the requirements or the distances that you have at the site. So that circle is distances to inhabited structures and spectators.
Okay.
That's my minimum safe distance. And that can be expanded if need be, and some communities do. But that's what the determining factor is.
From that site, would the fireworks be visible from any of those parking lots if people remained there?
I believe so. Yeah, we were out at the site about a month ago, and looking at the area and knowing the area. I grew up just up the road here in Heitmeyer, so I know the area certainly has changed a lot since I left. But it's looking at those parking lots, they can be even seen from those parking lots. So there's not necessarily in the neighborhoods. I mean, naturally mature trees might obscure view, but there's neighborhoods surrounding it that you can view it from. So you could, if you want to do this in that manner, encourage people to stay in those areas. Just park, watch the show.
There initially was a concern about the fields being disturbed, but we were told you have a platform, you put everything on, and
Well, everything is
there's no damage.
Yeah, everything is in above ground mortar
Yeah.
racks, and it's commonplace to shoot in ball fields and fields such as this. So, if the vehicle can't go out there, we can move the product out by hand. We've done that before. We'll leave the property in the condition it was found.
I raised an issue at the workshop on Tuesday as it relates to immunity for the township for COVID-19 events. And Deepak, you had put something together. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so, what Mr. Weedman is referring to is we were concerned if individuals were to contract COVID-19 at an event like this, would they try to hold the township liable? There is, as you may know, there's a bill, I think it's House Bill 606, that's out there right now, hasn't passed the Senate yet, that is trying to kind of stymie any liability, tort liability as we call it, for COVID-related injuries, if you will. But right now, outside of the normal governmental immunity we have, that bill is still pending. Will it be passed by July 4th? We don't know. But that's one of the concerns that we had discussed at the workshop meeting. And unfortunately, there's nothing that's been passed yet that we can point to say, okay, this helps us have some comfort that there would not be additional liability.
Great. Yeah, and I have not had that discussion with other cities and municipalities because that's not our part of the component. Maybe Standish could have some comments on it. I'm responsible for what's inside the blue circle, and I get it. I get it. Everyone's concerned. I get it. And our industry survives on public gatherings, and our company alone is looking at a 70% reduction in its business. I should be at the ballpark. I should be at Kings Island and 6 other amusement parks. We have all of our overseas shows have canceled for the entire season. Other friends of ours in the industry have experienced a complete 100% loss, and they may never come back. We're fighting to survive now till next season, and hoping we'll still do that. And if there's a way to make it happen, we'll try it. If there's concerns, naturally, I'm in your position. I'm a trustee in Hamilton Township, so I understand your concerns. All I was here to do is to just, answer any questions as it relates to the fireworks and tell you what we're hearing from other communities that really want to move forward with it.
If I could speak, thank you.
Please.
There have been studies documented specifically for asymptomatic individuals where they did trace them, and the contact that came into 455 people, 0 actually came down with COVID. I understand the liability concern. Today, the township runs that risk every single day. People have been exposed to this since as early as January. That's documented. The shutdown did not occur until March, so I think that that legal argument would falter. But I do want to allow March 1st to present. The lockdown, and it has been a lockdown, has hurt a lot of people. March 1st is one business that Sycamore Township can be proud of for many different reasons. And they have said that they would partner with this event, and we want to support them. So I want to let Chris speak on behalf of them.
Hi, my name's Christopher Paquette. I'm the general manager of March 1st Brewing and Distilling.
Address, please.
Brewery address, my personal? We're 7885 East Kemper Road in Sycamore Township, and I am 5340 Leatherwood in Westchester Township. Standish and I, we've worked together on a few events in the past, mostly small ones in the brewery. But I will say that having been open now for the 3 weeks that we've been open, we have noticed that the precautions that we've put in place, move the tables around, we've got masks, we've got sanitizer everywhere, we've got a large space. If any of you guys have been in, you know that our space is enormous. We're making use of the patios, the back, the old tap room. You guys have all seen it. The public and the guests have been very, 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 very good about policing themselves. I haven't had to say a word to a group over 10. I haven't had to say anything about people crowding together. We haven't had people lingering at the bar. I'm really proud of our clientele. I've always been. I think that we've got the best clientele of any brewery in the city. But we haven't had too many issues with people gathering. I can't speak to festivals because none of us have been to a festival since prior to that. But we were shut down, completely shut down for 8 weeks. Everybody, myself included, the owners, nobody was drawing salary, nobody was getting paid. Everybody was, we were furloughed. And it hurt, and it lasted a long time. We were all concerned about whether or not we were going to come back and what we were going to be able to come back to, and if we were going to be able to bring everyone back. And we're still not all the way back. But I'm here to answer any questions regarding how we're operating, any questions that you might have about the way the beer garden might operate, any questions regarding pricing and things like that too, budgets for beer and how those types of things operate too.
Well, what sort of beer garden plan do you have for this? That would be a gathering space outside too,
Yes.
but like a restaurant space, and would require restrooms, I assume, too, which is something I guess Sandish is planning for with
Yeah.
portalettes or other things. But what is the plan that you have in mind?
So depending on the dimensions that are available to us when we file for, we have to file for what's called, and Standish would have to file for what's called a festival permit, an F permit, to pour beer in an area that doesn't have a liquor license. So we would dictate then the size of that area and space the tables out appropriately. March 1st can provide all of the tables and things like that would be in the beer garden. It would have to be a controlled attendance. It's a controlled area. It would have to be snow fenced off because state liquor agency or state liquor control will tell you that it has to have defined borders. Same thing with us. We can't have just an open patio. It has to have the ropes or whatever to define those areas. So it would definitely have to be something that needed to have a dictated capacity, and that would have to be managed depending on how big it is. But we could, March 1st, like I said, can bring in all the tables. Our distributor can provide the beer dispensing equipment, and obviously they would bring the beer, and then volunteers would be dispensing the beer. So you could make that a 21 and over area. You could make it family friendly if you saw fit, if the space allowed it, but beer would not be able to go out of that area. But that's really the plan, is to set it up like a giant patio. And it's something that you could sell tickets to also. If in the future, because we're limited space, you could sell tickets to that too to raise money for the whatever foundations you're working with. The Cemetery Endowment Fund is an awesome, I love old cemeteries, just to put that out there. There's one in my neighborhood that's incredible.
What sort of participation do you need by the public for this to be economically viable for March 1st to commit to all this and to have the staffing you need to police the area too, to make sure you don't get over the capacity
Well,
concerns?
March 1st is a willing sponsor, and we're willing to do this one this year, and if it gets bigger next year, we'll own it. We'll put our name on the front. We're willing to go all the way in for an event in Sycamore Township because it's an underserved community, especially with Blue Ash and their big thing right next door, and Sims does a big one every year. So we're willing to be the patriarch of this event going forward. This just came across my desk about a week and a half ago, I think, and we instantly were like, this is our backyard. Like, this is, of course we want to do this. So from us, from a staffing standpoint, you'd need someone to work the gate of the beer garden itself, to police that area, to make sure that doesn't go over capacity with just a clicker, and then the volunteers to pour the beer and clean up. And then my staff will handle set up and tear down.
Other questions by anybody?
Thank you.
Love your beer, by the way.
Thank you, I appreciate
You
that.
forgot to mention you had great clientele, but the beer's better.
It's not though.
So I just wanted to close in saying that Sycamore Township has the opportunity to either be a beacon of light for freedom and liberty, or it can be the darkness and tell people to stay home. Do you have any additional questions?
That's very dramatic.
This is very dramatic, unfortunately.
It is, and we're faced with state health orders out there that interfere with all of this, which is potentially the problem. But what do you need from the township as to this? I envision, among other things, to get the liquor permit necessary to sell beer, you have to have the consent of the property owner. So if that's happening on township property, you certainly need the trustees, I think, to approve that, not the administration. You've already arranged for a park rental, from what I understand. We have some standards for that, but we have liability concerns too. So what approvals do you need from the township beyond what I've just mentioned?
Well,
and the parking, no parking stuff, I guess.
yeah, the no parking would be for the benefit of the residents. But for the actual event, simply a green light. March 1st is one of the companies that really wants this event. I've spoken to the two direct bordering companies who want to support the event and have signed, one has signed letter of intent, the other one's waiting on the owner to sign that. They are very excited. Their employees live in the High Point area, and this is a way for us to give back to that community. Everybody knows that, you know, things such as the High Point area does not have a lot for their youth to enjoy. So it's just for the community. It's the right thing to do. Every community should have a 4th of July event. In my opinion, that's probably one of the reasons why we're not ranked as a top 50 community. Maybe if we did this, we might get on that ranking.
I didn't see where you were pointing the pointer when you were talking about the streets and the no parking. Were you talking about 1st to 7th?
Yeah, first, those streets, but just the lower half, or the southern half.
Southern part of it, okay.
Right, yeah. But I really don't think much is needed. Deepak, I remember you speaking on at the workshop about that this is not a typical use, that the trustees should sign for that, but it is a public space. It's paid for by the people. We, the people, want to use it to celebrate our independence. I don't believe that the township we're not asking for the township to pay anything. The township is actually going to receive funds from the community putting this event on.
Stanley, I think the big concern is the unknown factor. I know when I looked at this initially, I was saying, how about portalets? How many portalets do you get? And then Corporal Kidd is standing back there. Tracy Kellum's years and years experience with the festival. How many sheriff's deputies would you have on a slow night was Friday night? How many would you have?
8 is what I was told.
Yeah, 8 to 10.
8 to 10. And so you're prepared to have 8 to 10?
Budgeted.
Okay.
Portalets budgeted. Street closure budgeted.
And clean up?
I have a myriad of folks that have supported different events over the past 20 years I've been involved in. Volunteers will not be an issue.
One other thing we didn't talk about that you and I have talked about, and I think it's useful for everyone to hear, is and I think you don't want the event to get out of hand, of course, but you want people in the area to be able to celebrate. You've been planning this for Sycamore Township residents primarily. What's your plan for promoting this without promoting it too much, basically, so that, you know, it doesn't go viral on Twitter or Facebook and everyone says, hey, there are fireworks in Sycamore, get over there?
So no social media, no radio, no print. The only advertisement is going to be a postcard that would contain the logo of all the community partners and also information for the residents. It would simply go to the residents in the surrounding areas of Sycamore Township.
Is there any way to restrict admission to residents or people accompanying residents? I don't know if that's feasible.
You're teeing me up to say a phrase, but no, we're not going to check papers.
You had that queued up too, didn't you? Yeah.
So no, this is for
It's a public park.
It's a public park.
Well, it is, yeah, I know.
And there will be people that will elect to stay home, and we could request that if they can view and are close to remain at their house, so that others might be able to come.
Well, and I ask about the residents simply because that might discourage people from outside from coming if they thought, well, I'm not supposed to go.
Yeah, I mean, we could say it's for residents only, but there's no way to ensure that.
Yeah.
We were talking, we had the JEDS meeting today, and Tom Mueller was here from Madeira, and the Toms were with us here. And the big concern was the unknown factor. that, you know, we have 4,000 people, then all of a sudden there's 25,000 people, you know, what do we do? They canceled because of that factor. They had no idea how many people were gonna show up. Because nobody else is doing stuff, we're afraid of that, we decided to shut it down.
But there are other fireworks in other communities. So I asked that the township simply allow us to rent the facilities. It's a public facility. We just want to rent the fields to put on this event for the community. And as part of that, we are going to start an endowment fund for the cemetery.
Well, here's what I'd like to know, I guess, before we could make any decision about that. First of all, what do our professionals think here? The administrator, Mr. Kellums, as to parks, Mr. Desai as to the legal aspects. And I just went blank on the other item. The other would be, can you get health department clearance for this? I know you said you reached out to him. Was it Greg Kesterman you spoke with?
I've spoken with a couple different people. Jeremy Hessel is the head of the department. At this point, the guidance was simply the 6-foot distancing. As you could see with the opening of various events, the restriction of 10 does not apply to an event like this.
If they could provide an interpretation to the township, perhaps, indicating as such that an event like this was compliant, that keeps us from having to make a decision that might be counter from what the local authorities say, because they do have final say on that. That would be something useful to obtain before proceeding in the end with something. But I'd like to know what Mr. Desai, Mr. Kellum, and Mr. Warwick think.
I can request that, and that is something that in my discussion with him today, I suggested that the township request that to make sure that all concerns are addressed. I'd be more than happy to act as the go-between.
It's not a township-sponsored event, is
Understand.
the thing. And
It's
don't get me
not
wrong.
my concern.
I'd love to see it be able to happen. It's just there are all these hurdles out there and concerns. So what do you guys who we pay to think about these things think?
Well, I mean, the first thing that popped into my mind as I looked at this area, given the blue circle is going to occupy a large amount of the park, how are you going to enforce the social distancing guidelines within the area where the bystanders will be?
Clarification, the location of the circle could change. Not to throw a curveball, but if the entity to the west of the park would allow the circle to overlap their wooded area, that would enlarge the amount of space. Not saying that that would cover it. But to address your concern, all we can do is make suggestions. Even the sheriff's department has said that they are not going to enforce it. So if the township were to call the sheriff's department, and we've seen this all over the country, the sheriff's departments have simply said they're not going to enforce it.
Yeah, my understanding has been that it's really a public health, it's a health department matter. But I have to be honest, your answer concerns me even more. If you're just going to make suggestions, and I don't know how many people can pull up in these parking lots, but I presume at least 500, and you're going to have that many people in the current layout, which is a relatively small area, whether or not those people choose to follow the social distancing guidelines is, I guess, to some extent an individual right. But now we set them out into their communities, among their elderly parents, among their special needs children that may have compromised immunity systems. We're not going to obviously be doing any contact tracing at this point. It causes me great concern that you're going to have an event that you have a very, very dense area where people will congregate. One thing I heard that sounded more reasonable in terms of that concern is if there was some way to keep people from actually going into the park and allowing them to view the fireworks from their cars, or view them from areas where you cannot have that dense congregation. You know, this is the biggest concern for me. And I have to tell you, I mean, I'm coming at this from a very personal standpoint. You know, my father is COVID-19 positive. I've had issues with the protocols laid down. I haven't seen my father in 2.5 months. You know, I don't necessarily agree with them. I think he's getting caught up in some red tape at this point because he's had COVID-19 for over a month and has shown absolutely no symptoms. But, you know, I'm an officer of the court, and, you know, that's what the state government and the state health department requires. I work within the system, but in the meantime, I follow the protocols. You know, I've got a special needs child that's, you know, immunity system is compromised. I pulled him out of school before any of the schools closed. I just worry.
I have the same concerns. My mother was in a rehabilitation facility, a nursing home, when this came out, and was basically on lockdown. I have other dear friends that are in homes on lockdown. It is a concern, but that does not invalidate our rights.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I can have a brewski one day and talk about our views on that, because I'm happy to share them in private. But my point, I guess, to you, Mr. Fortman, is this: my biggest concern is the number of people that will congregate in what appears under the present plan to be a relatively small area, and what might be more appetizing, especially for the board, would be if you could do something where people would remain in the parking lots in their cars, so that we know that we're not going to be creating a situation where you have really what appears to be an inability to socially distance.
Ultimately, for example, if I can rent the fields and I can have fireworks, but the township does not sign a beer permit, there can be no beer, correct?
Without the liquor permit, yeah, you're not going to get it.
So the township has that ability. Ultimately, it falls to you as the elected officials to make these decisions. I personally don't think that you should be able to make these decisions, but that's my own philosophical interpretation of this. So you're absolutely right. There is a way for the township to restrict some of the activities proposed, but it is a public park. People are going there every day. I've seen many groups, over 10, every day almost. But that is the beauty of our nation.
How many cars can these 4 parking lots hold?
Over 1,000.
So, I mean, if you just presume there would be 2 people per car, I mean, you could have a couple thousand people congregating in that park.
Outside the blue circle, though.
Right. And I do anticipate that the circle is going to move to the west, which would further open up park space.
But it won't reduce the size of the circle, correct?
No, we could also enlarge the size of the circle, correct, Joe?
You could, I mean, you're looking at a larger size product. I'd have to revisit the diagram and see. But I mean, depending on where the other buildings lay and where other property lines are, you could move basically we're moving our site further to the west.
Right.
Which is opening up more of the park. It's putting more of a fallout zone on someone else's property, which more than likely need a letter of permission that that's okay with them.
Right. So I am simply here as a public servant for my community, mostly for my children and the other children, so that they can have a little bit of awe and learn about our nation's founding.
Mr. Kellums, would you weigh in on this?
Yeah, my main concern, a couple of them, is where the parking lots are located, getting the people there safely. I mean, you've got Kemper Road, Salzman Road, School Road. I know you said you mentioned that you talked to the county engineer. Did they give you permission to close down?
I need to submit an application. I was not going to do that until I have a green light. And as far as parking lot 1 and 2, people can walk to the park without actually having to go on Salzman. because what's depicted there doesn't show the new curb cut and parking lot that was put in as part of their expansion.
Yes. So my only other concern has already been mentioned, not only the crowd in the park, but spillover into the community, not only High Point to the north, but Bishopsgate to the east. We've got a fairly dense community there. Just concerned about spillover of people into our neighborhoods, not knowing how the residents feel about that. Because when we first talked about this, I thought Schuler Park would be better. I know it's not as close to everything, but there's no residents right around it.
It's true.
And not as much parking.
Well, you're using surrounding parking anyway. You're not using the parking at the park.
Right. We did look at Schuler. Logistically, there's not enough parking that people can walk to from there.
So other than that, it would just, same concern that Deepak said is, the social distancing. I mean, the state order, we really don't know where it's at or where it's going to be or if it's extended or, as far as I know right now, it's even though some people are in our park, we are not having an event even though it's not our event, it's our park. And if we end up with a couple thousand people there, that's different than 20 people playing baseball.
The one thing I heard was the sheriff's department won't enforce it. So the sheriff's department is not going to come and say, hey, you got to step back, you got to get away from here. They're not going to enforce this. So you could have 20 members of the sheriff's department out here, and they're just going to be, asking you maybe, but they can't enforce it. So that bothers me.
That's the way it is all throughout our country currently.
I know it is, and the concern is today's environment. That's the major thing that's controlling everything. Mr. Ward, do you want to weigh in on this? Your thoughts?
Actually, wait, I had another question for Mr. Kellums, if you don't mind first. Tracy, we have rented the park to other parties before for use of the entire park, haven't we, up there?
We've rented out to soccer organizations
Wasn't there
for
some
soccer tournaments, and
last year? Wasn't there some survivor game there of some
Yeah,
kind?
TV show.
there
I
was.
think there was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
was.
TV.
Yeah. And has the park made it through unscathed through events like that?
Yes.
So assuming they're,
I mean, there wasn't a huge crowd there, but yes.
yeah, but there aren't flowers to be trampled or things like that either, right? It's grass and it's ball fields.
For the
and you want
most
to
part,
preserve
yes.
the clay, of course, on that. But, okay. And I do know Deer Park is actually doing some of their concerts in Chamberlain Park again now somehow.
They canceled them.
And they were promoting them as of a day or two ago.
They canceled them yesterday.
Oh, they did, okay. Interesting.
I don't have any other, all the concerns have been mentioned. And philosophically, there's a lot of moving parts here. I told Standish, I think more than a couple times, that if I didn't work here, I'd be cheering him on and I'd be in the beer garden. Unfortunately, I guess the trustees can make that possible since I work at will.
Well, if I weren't a trustee right now, I'd be in the same position too, I think. But,
So,
but I am one.
We've got a state that's giving us unconstitutional rules. We've got a health department that somehow has command of this, both at the state level and the county level. And even though the township form of government is the best that you can get, we are the lowest on the totem pole. The feds tell us what to do, the state tells us what to do, the county tells us what to do, the health department tells us what to do, it goes on and on and on. So I think that it's a great idea and all of that, but in my job that I'm paid to do, we've got all these other agencies that could cause the township a black eye, even if the event went off peacefully, which, we have a fear of the unknown, but it may work just fine. I just don't know. And so I just view it as my job at this point to express my concerns about it. And I don't have anything to add to, anything that's been said so far.
If Mr. Fortman had county health department blessing for the event, would that change your views, or are there other concerns as well because of the crowding and so forth?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully there's no, I'm worried about a crush of a crowd and other things that might happen there. And like I say, it's just speculation. How do I know that's going to happen? I don't, but in my role, I think I have to err on the side of, caution. But it's not up to me.
Any more
Questions, anybody?
discussion on this? Do you want to make a motion to?
Well, and I don't know. I mean, I'd love to find a way to make it happen, is the thing. But I have all these same concerns too. And if we were to authorize it on the condition that the health department provide prior approval of it, and subject to final approval of the plans that Mr. Fortman has, I mean, I'd be more comfortable with that. Because state health orders may well change over time, and we may get 2 more weeks into this month, and the governor says, "Hey, everybody have fireworks," at which point you'd be scrambling to try to get it going if it weren't approved earlier, I think. But I think
that's a great point, because this thing's changing by the hour. Today in Warren County, the amusement industry is a class action kind of thing. They filed suit, suing the state.
And there could well be an injunction, which would enable something like this to go forward, but we'd still have the crowd concerns, of course, too.
It's just a mess.
There's no reason that crowd concern wouldn't exist in future years as well.
Well, there is, because in future years, if health orders aren't in place, scaring everyone else from having it and causing them to have already canceled it, we wouldn't be the only show in town in terms of jurisdictions where fireworks are happening. And here we mostly are, unless these things change. Warren County may see some change there then for Lebanon, but the only ones I know about right now are Loveland Sims, possibly Lebanon, Kings Island, it sounds like, and the city of Hamilton. And
There was a list I submitted, I gave the stands, if you haven't seen that, there was a number of.
okay, I haven't seen that, so, okay.
Mr. Rozzi, are most of those communities, are they doing fireworks where they're having people on site, or are they doing fireworks where they're having people at remote locations where they can see the fireworks?
Most are having them at remote locations, yes. It's published. The event sites aren't open. They're not providing any entertainment or anything like that. They're having fireworks. And I think even Lebanon announced that a couple of weeks ago, that this is how they're doing it.
We're sort of in a weird posture in our meeting. We're in resident comments right now as we're talking about all this anyway, but I don't think right now would be the time to decide this in the meeting anyway, if we're going to decide something.
So we would decide this later on after.
But if I could finish my thought, there are a lot of members of the public from the township here. I would be interested to know what those members of the public here happen to think about this. This is not a poll, and however many vote in the crowd win, but I'd certainly like to know what the members of the public think. So if others hadn't signed up to speak at the meeting and are interested in doing that to address this topic, please volunteer to do so as we move forward with that. Any other thoughts?
Hello. My name is Kathy Kugler. I live at 7106 Tenderfoot Lane, Sycamore Township. I think that this is a good event to have. I personally probably, if I went and there were people crowding in on me, I would leave because I have the ability to take my feet and move. I think that you should have some sort of reservation response, not that you would not allow people in, but I've attended a lot of events where you have to RSVP to it in some way, and you get a ticket, and then you come in if you wanted to know how many people thought they might want to come. So I'm just saying that in that area where you might have people sitting, I think you would be able to say X number of people would be allowed in, because you do have the ability to control the perimeter with that snow gating or whatever. So I'm just saying, people have the ability to not be, if you don't feel comfortable, to leave. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Janice?
I have a separate topic at the
No, well,
citizen comment. Am I allowed to talk to the?
well, no,
fireworks?
not right now. We're gonna wrap this up. So you'll be up in a moment.
He's commenting about fireworks.
Yeah, if you do about the fireworks, please
Okay,
make a
you're gonna
comment
do
about
the
that.
fireworks?
We'll give you an opportunity
Yeah.
to speak otherwise later.
Yeah.
My name's Jay Janis Jr., 4462 Daffodil Avenue, Sycamore Township, Ohio. Nothing against Sycamore Township, but when this COVID came out, and it's correct, after Deputy Smith mentioned that his department had no enforcement powers for violations of the 6-foot rule, I contacted the Hamilton County Health Department, which takes in Sycamore Township. And I did ask them about the 6-foot rule, and I wanted to know what their policy was. I did not speak with Greg Kesterman, but somebody mentioned the other name, and that's the person I spoke to. And they told me their policy was they would contact the entity, whether it's a private business or government, their office would contact, not in person the first time, and they would speak to them about the issue. If someone, whether it's the same person or someone else contacted them the second time, they would send a personal an employee out to investigate it. So that's where it's at, or that's at least what they informed me. And I apologize if I didn't hear this during the presentations, but what would be the duration of it once it started, the fireworks?
6 to 10:30, fireworks starting at 10.
Half hour?
No, probably
Depends on how many spots.
10 to 15 minutes. So,
And would it be rain or shine?
yes.
Okay. And I agree with Mrs. Kugler. I think it'd be very positive. I have concerns also, like many of you here, since it would be basically one of the few out here in the northeast suburbs. It's like the unknowns. And with this COVID, and Mr. Ward mentioned all these things changing daily, I agree with him. But I think it has a lot of possibilities. Mr. Rossi, Mr. Fortman seems to put an incredible amount of planning in it. And I think with some considerations, I think it would be very positive for our township. Thank you.
Mr. Warwick, I know we made an exception for Mr. Standish, so it's really not public comment time with him. We made it as a special presentation. Can we move forward with making a decision whether to go forward on his part or end it right now?
We can choose to do whatever we want, I think, but I'd be interested to hear more public comments about this particular topic if we could.
Are there more public comments on this? Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Barbara Hall Waddell, and I live at 6022 Cherokee Drive, right down Kenwood Road in Madeira, but I do own 2 properties in Sycamore Township. I was working with Standish about a week ago to try to find some food trucks, and as Joe Rossi said, the food truck industry is also struggling to make it. There's a lot of food trucks that will not reopen for one reason or another. Some of them don't want to reopen because of fears of COVID, and others will not be reopening because of the economy right now. I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of having the event, and one aspect that you haven't brought up, you've brought up maintenance, and you brought up police, and you brought up all that, but you have not brought up education. And you know, we're really making history right now, and our children are watching. And in my case, my grandchildren are watching. And I want to be proud of the way that I handled myself through this situation of being in quarantine since mid-March. I mean, at the time, my daughter's business was shut down, and I begged her to just make it till April 1st. You know, you can do this, you can do this, you can make it till April 1st. And then it was Easter. Anna, you can make it till Easter. You know, I think you're gonna be okay. And to think that we're now talking about the 4th of July is beyond anything that I thought we'd ever go through as a nation and as a community. So, you know, I hope that we can be proud of our handling of this situation. I hope we can have some lessons that we learn from this, that we can teach our kids about what it means to be an American, because at the end of the day, we have the right, and it's a God-given right, to assemble. It's right there in the first article of the Bill of Rights. We have the right to religion, freedom of the press, and the right to assemble. And I think that's what Standish is trying to do here is teach all of us a lesson about what it really means to be an American. And, you know, when I was growing up, there were a couple of songs that really made an impression on me. One of them being Bruce Springsteen's, you know, Born in the USA, right? So just the spirit of being an American, right? And then we had Don McLean with Bye Bye Miss American Pie, and the fact that one day the music died in that song, right? So we don't want to let the music die, do we, Mr. LaBarbara?
She knows how to push her buttons, Joe.
That's good.
But
That's
the
good.
third song that came to my mind today was the song by Joni Mitchell. I'm not sure I know the name of it, but there's a line in there about not knowing what you've got till it's gone. And I really hope that all of us can hold on to liberty. I hope we can hold on to independence. We are celebrating independence from government tyranny. At the end of the day, this is about government tyranny, okay? So please, allow this to go on. Allow the American spirit to thrive. Allow people who have risk to not show up. They don't have to come. We're not forcing them to come, right? People can come of their own will. They can make their own decisions. At the end of the day, this is about freedom. Thank you.
Very nice, Barbara. Thank you. Very nice.
Did anyone else want to comment?
Katie?
I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that. My name is Katie Stewart. I live at 4600 Orchard Lane, and I am with, you know, the people that have spoken already. We're intelligent enough, the clientele that visit March 1st are intelligent enough to maintain the social distance. And of course, if you're sick, if you're immune compromised, stay home. We've all heard it ingrained. It's part of our culture now. That's what we're supposed to do as civilized human beings, and I see it as a great event, and we could be a light in the darkness. Thanks.
Anyone else just for the fireworks?
I'm curious, is there anyone who thinks it's a terrible idea but doesn't want to speak?
Wrong crowd.
Wrong crowd, okay.
Mr. Warwick, what do we do at this point?
Well,
I mean, if
We're
there's
still
somebody,
in-
if there's somebody that wants to actually go forward with it, they would make a motion, they would need a second, and then we would need approval of 2 out of the 3 board members.
We're still in public comment. Should we
No,
finish
no, we
public comments
changed
first?
that because he made a special presentation.
Yeah,
So
we could
didn't
address
make
it now.
this as a public comment thing.
Okay.
All right, I will move that the township allow the rental to proceed on the following conditions. The sponsors will agree to comply with any state orders which do apply to the event or any activities occurring there, and the sponsors will seek and obtain clearance from the Hamilton County Health Department that the event is not in violation of the law if it proceeds as planned, and that the event will be promoted only to Sycamore Township residents to try to limit the attendance, and that it will otherwise be put into effect using the logistics plan that Mr. Fortman described in his comments earlier. Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I have great concerns about it with today's environment, and I know that the people here would behave themselves and act accordingly. The unknown factor is what concerns me. But, you know, Barbara made a good point, you know. This is our right to assemble, and so I'll second that.
All right, well, let me know. I came in here thinking that as a citizen, it's a great idea, and as a trustee, it's a terrible idea. And you have to balance the two. I'm here to decide what's best for the township and its residents. We've had a lot of discussion about this already and questions. Mr. Desai, let me ask you, with the conditions in the motion, I know you'll still have concerns there, but does that alleviate some of them if all those boxes are checked before the event proceeds?
You know, my concerns are always, you know, very straightforward. Insurance, indemnification, those are the typical concerns, and obviously I've been communicating with Mr. Warwick, and he's been on top of that. I think you heard Mr. Rossi talk about their policy limits. You know, we've got a general liability policy as well. You know, the comments I made before, I mean, I think still stand, that you're not going to be able to necessarily enforce the social distancing guidelines. You know, that's for the trustees to determine whether or not they view that as a priority concern or not. You know, you've heard some very emotional comments made. I certainly would say this, you know, I think that given the fact that there are other communities that are doing them from, you know, primarily remote locations, would suggest that the greater wisdom is that, yes, you can celebrate, but you can celebrate in a way that is not just about your personal rights, but about your conscientious obligations to the rest of America, which are, you know, you might be immune when you leave that park. If you go to a restaurant, you know, if you go to, if you come in contact with somebody who is elderly, they don't know where you've been, they don't know what you have. So, you know, those aren't necessarily legal concerns. Those are concerns that I would just throw out there that you gotta keep everything in perspective. It is, you know, it's a balancing act. It sounds to me like the event could be held very nicely with remote locations. But, you know, at the end of the day, if, you know, the trustees want to move forward with it, legally, I think, you know, we've covered our bases with the conditions you've laid out, which I wrote down as sponsors agree to comply with the guidelines pertaining to their industries. Clearance from the Hamilton County Health Department that this is not a violation. Limited advertising, as Mr. Fortman described, which I believe he said was no social media, no radio, just a postcard of some sort that would be going out to local residents. And then finally, you said the logistics, as Mr. Fortman described, and I presume you were referring to his ability to secure the 4 parking lots, the closure of the roads, that access that we saw from the 2 lots that were in the north. I don't know if those were 3 and 4 or 1 and 2. So those are the conditions I have down.
Yes, you wrote that down much better than I said it, by the way, but that's exactly right.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And I would think if the trustees do vote to approve this, we would then also have to put in a parking plan in the neighborhoods around it, as discussed, which would require a separate vote.
I'm very concerned about it. It's a vote.
Can I just make a comment? I agree with Tom James. I think as a resident, this is awesome. As a trustee, we're getting boxed in on this deal. I think that it's, yeah, I'm really concerned. If you didn't have food trucks, which were an attraction, and you didn't have a beer garden, which was a serious attraction, then maybe it'd be different. Just to have the fireworks, everyone sits in their car, sits in a parking lot, watches it. I'm all for that. But the fact that this is like Tom James said, it's the only game in town pretty much, and for us to not know what we can expect from attendance at this thing is troubling to me. And I'm saying that as a trustee, not as a resident, because as a resident and as a citizen, I'm just like everybody else commented. I'd be at the beer garden with them. So I struggle with this because we have a certain responsibility as trustees to make sure that we're making the right decision for our entire township. And I totally get it. I totally get, you know, this is a bright light in a lot of darkness we've had over the last 3 months. But I think at the end of the day, the best decision is to remain cautious. So I'm struggling with the fact that we don't really know what to expect when this thing happens. And for that reason, I'm having a difficult time supporting it.
And I applaud you, Mr. Standish. Really, I applaud you for the work you've done with this. This is incredible in that short period of time.
Can I just say one other thing? I agree with him. I mean, I'm looking at the plan, I'm saying, wow, this is pretty damn good. I'm serious. This looks great. A lot of bases covered, great. But it goes back to that original thing that Mr. LaBarber said, you know, what can we expect? We don't know what to expect. And if we knew who was going to be in attendance and that we weren't going to have any problems, I think we'd all be totally on board with it, but the fact that there are issues with it, and we don't really know what we might expect from attendance, that's troubling to me.
Let me ask one other question to Mr. Fortman. Well, no, never mind. No, okay. I'll ask you later.
I did give it a second, so.
Yeah, we have the motion here. I will just add, yeah, I'm torn in both directions over this and don't know which way to go. And I share Mr. Weedman's concerns and Mr. LaBarber's concerns and Mr. Work's concerns. And on the other hand, I agree with what everyone has said out there too. I think I'm prepared to take a leap into the unknown here and trust our residents with their judgment as to what makes sense and the risk they're willing to take on if all these other clearances are in place.
So
Did you
if
have
I
another
could,
comment?
based upon what you said as the restrictions, for lack of better requirements, I don't know the proper terminology.
We like to call them conditions.
Conditions. Based upon those conditions, that would require the health department to basically sign off on the event.
Correct.
If the health department signs off on the event, I have no reason to believe that the trustees would feel that their opinion with regard to the safe of the community is superior to the health department's.
As to safety, you'd be correct, I would think. But as to crowd control and potential crush, that's still the concern. And we are the property owner there, and you need our consent to do
Actually,
it
the
there.
people are the property owner.
Well, that's true, but affirmative consent is required for certain things to happen there. But yes, you're right, it is public property. If you were just to show up on your own with your family without it being an organized event, you could do pretty much whatever you wanted within park rules there.
Basically, hearing the hesitation, I don't want to cause any more disconcern for either of you. May I make a humble suggestion that in light of your comments, that you permit the firework event to occur and simply indicate that the park is closed.
So you wouldn't have the food trucks and you wouldn't have the beer booth?
No, I'd basically be a peasant again.
You're negotiating against yourself, by the way. We haven't voted yet, you know.
So you're saying you're just gonna have the fireworks and nothing else?
If that's what would give you guys the ability to let the people celebrate the 4th of July, yes.
I'd be much more comfortable with that if we didn't have the other attractions there on the park, frankly. I mean, I'd love to see March 1st serving its beer there, don't get me wrong. I'd love to see our food trucks prospering there in some way too. But yes, it's less likely to be a crushing crowd and a longer term event that's going to be pulling a lot of people in even over the course of it as people get there at 6 o'clock or whatever and start tweeting, hey, we're here for the fireworks, come on out, and people start to grow, you know, come here, there's beer and all that. So yeah, it's probably more viable.
Sam Adams will be rolling over in his grave.
Well, you can bring him in a 6-pack there at least because you could buy him
Don't
a
say
sword.
that. But I would pose the question, if that is the way forward, how do you tell the residents that they cannot go to their park?
It's a good question. I think it just kind of nixes your suggestion that we should have them in the park without any beer booth or, because I don't know how we tell people other than.
When
Tracy's got yellow tape.
When we rent the park for a private event, that it's closed off to the public, right? So when we have private events that people rent out, shelters, for example, it's closed off to the public. So if you were to rent the park, we could close the park.
Okay.
Well, but your suggestion is we close the park so people don't come in, right?
We got a conundrum.
So, gentlemen.
Does that sound feasible to you, that you could rope off that park?
I mean, it sounds feasible. I think it could be done, but if it's only gonna be fireworks, it's gonna be a much shorter event, and you're not gonna advertise, so people aren't even gonna know it's happening. Ozzy's just gonna come in, set up the fireworks, and shoot them off.
And if he rents the park, it's up to him who, I mean, if he's rented it, he could invite his friends, and I agree, without the beer garden and food trucks, my concerns about crowd control go down.
Does the music get to play?
So we have a motion and a second on the floor.
And now we have well.
But we still have a motion and a second.
Yeah, I think we should vote on the motion before us first, and then if need be, make another.
Or you could just withdraw your motion.
Or we could do that.
Withdraw the motion and start over again.
There's a motion on the floor.
It's up to Mr. Porter. You ask Mr. Porter to call or to withdraw. Decision
Well,
time.
I'll withdraw the motion and move instead, same motion as before, except the event shall be restricted such that there shall not be food or beverages served there or beer served there in the manner Mr. Fortman has described, and that the start time of the event be pushed until later accordingly, since there'd be less need to gather earlier.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock start time, does that work?
What about clearance from the Hamilton County Health Department? That would no longer be a
Oh, no.
condition?
Well, that's no longer necessary, I suppose, in that sense, that's true, so.
And do we want to have a clause in there that no band or music? Do we want to put that in there? Because you could always get a band. And I think you don't want to do that.
Well, that wasn't part of the proposal anyway, so.
I mean, okay, so that would just be it, just the fireworks, and that's it.
Just fireworks,
And he invites,
otherwise as stated, yeah.
And so he's renting the park, and he can say who comes and goes into the park, because he's renting it.
Yes, which is kind of where we were in the first place with this, though, of course, anyway, really. He was renting the park
Yes.
for this. But without the food and the beer attraction, it's much less likely to draw the massive crowd that we all fear might show up there when people say, oh my gosh, we can go drink beer and watch fireworks. Nobody else will let us do it. So yeah, with just the fireworks, I think it becomes a much more family-oriented attraction anyway that is less likely to draw a lot of other people who are going to mob in the park. They may park their car, they may tailgate, but I think that's much more workable. Mr. Fortman still is able to have his fireworks celebration. Hopefully he still has sponsors who will come along in some sense with that, that could help him with the cost if needed. But I think that's a useful compromise from the plan as originally proposed. It still gets fireworks in Sycamore Township, so our residents can celebrate the 4th of July and enjoy it. So it's close to your house, you can probably even walk, Tom, to see it.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I can see him from my house, maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe they can see it from the Silver Spring House parking lot.
Mr. Standish, do you want us to go forward with this? Are you sure you're having second thoughts about, I don't know where you're going to.
First, I would prefer a motion to allow my original proposal to continue.
I would-
That's not on the floor.
It's already withdrawn.
That's not on
Yeah,
the
it's
floor
been
now.
withdrawn, yeah.
That's been withdrawn.
Yes, so there's a second motion, was it seconded?
Well, I think Mr. James was trying to put the motion together and
Yes.
kind of thinking out loud. What I was hearing from Mr. James was that the motion would be to allow Mr. Standish Fortin to rent the park for purposes of a private fireworks display that would not be open to the public, would not have food trucks, would not have a beer garden, would not have any other outside entertainment, with a limited time period of, I believe you mentioned 10 p.m., and that would be over at approximately 10:30 p.m. The other conditions that were in the original process of limited advertising would apply, as would the logistics as you originally described them.
That would be my motion. It would be not open to the public, but invitation only as to the private event, and rental to Standish Fortin or an organization he designates, such as his Red, White, and Boom Sycamore organization.
without the food trucks and
Correct.
entertainment and the beer garden, correct? Okay.
And we still have, I trust we still have everything in place as it relates to insurance and all that.
Right, all the other logistics and insurance that he proposed would still apply. The county would need to approve closing off, well, actually, there won't be people walking necessarily, but you'll seek school road path closure for that, so, yeah.
I feel more comfortable with this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, I so move. Is there a second?
Second,
Any further discussion about it?
any further discussion?
Mr. Warwick, any concerns?
No.
Okay. March 1st, any concerns?
No.
Mr. Porter, please call the roll.
Mr. LaBarbera.
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Let me suggest March 1st might want to schedule an event in conjunction with it at your premises beforehand.
Get health department approval.
Okay, we're going to move along now with residents' comments, and we're going back to the rules that we've established. Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Thank you. The 4-minute time limit, this is not a discussion. We're not answering questions. You can ask 4 minutes worth of questions, sing a song, do a dance routine. You have the 4 minutes to do that. We may answer your question at the end of your comments, and we may answer it during the trustees' comments, but we will answer it, leave your contact information, and somebody will get back to you.
Jay Janis was next.
J. Janis Jr., 4462 Daffodil Avenue, Sycamore Township, Ohio. Comments tonight are directed concerning comments made about me at the Sycamore Township workshop 2 days ago on Tuesday by the fiscal officer. Approximately 45 minutes into the meeting, fiscal officer, in conjunction with some other discussion about issues related to a potential financial audit, as I had it, Mr. Porter said he wanted to know, or he made a public records request. Who wanted it? He said, he mentioned Standish Fortin by name and myself. For me, he said, I asked for an audit committee. Mr. Porter, that is wrong. That's a lie. I've never said that. If you go back and listen to the audio, you go back and listen to the TV, the audio-visual recording, I said I had suggested to the trustees a forensic audit. Big difference between an audit committee. To my knowledge, that is fairly common in governmental entities when the administrations change. And as all of us are aware, it went from 2 to 1 one way for, I believe you've been in office for close to 30 years, to this past January, 2 to 1 the other way. In the past meetings before that, trustees James and LaBarbera had offered to you, in conjunction with some reporting by the administrator, Mr. Warwick, to get new software to make it more compatible. I think some here refer to it as the Boxer system. They said it was obsolete, hard to deal with, hard to find out. You were opposed to it. Trustee Weedman was opposed to it. You referred in a disparaging manner to our administrator several times as a non-resident bureaucrat. For the sake of the audience, and again, this is merely, I have nothing against them for their abilities. This is merely, I'd like to all be informed of some of the non-residents, and your parlance, a bureaucrat. Current past administrators, non-residents, I guess bureaucrats. Bickford, Robbie, Behrens, Malloy. Currently, Mr. Warwick. I've never heard you speak disparagingly against any of them. None of them are residents. Here's some of our department heads. Kidd, Smith, Miller, I believe Desai, Petty. I can't remember that gentleman's name, but he's frequently in charge of the bid openings when you have them here. If any of you within the sound of my voice dispute that you do not live in Sycamore Township, speak now. The employees, your employee directly in your department, the finance, basically a woman in the office, Campbell, Gunderson, Stavies, Johnson, all non-residents, I guess in your parlance, bureaucrats. To my knowledge, all these people I just mentioned, you and your dealings with them have never had any problems referring to them, or because they're non-residents, I believe you, the past trustees, the current trustees, are satisfied with their work. They're all still here. The only two changes that's come this January that I'm aware of is the administrator, a former administrator was a non-resident, he's gone. We have a new administrator. He's a non-resident. You don't like the new administrator because he asked the questions about the finances, wanted to see the financial records. For the record, Trustee LaBarbera at a previous meeting directed him. I've been here for 30 years. I've been in many of these meetings, more than anybody here on this side of the dais. I have never heard you or any of the administrators or trustees make a comment as far, is that it?
That's 4 minutes, sir.
You can finish your thought. Go ahead, finish your
I've
thought.
never heard anyone say it about the budget. So in other words, I don't know what the problem is with why you have any fears of anybody, be it a volunteer committee, me, anyone, looking at the budget. Thank you. I have additional comments, but I'll say them at a future date. Thank you.
Mr. Abram?
Gentlemen, I'm here tonight to bring to light some serious deficiencies in the operation of this township. Transparency seems to be lost the minute an election was concluded. As a taxpayer, I have reason to be seriously concerned here today. I challenge you to tell me why the dismissal of Greg Bickford was good for my township. It certainly wasn't for cause, as he had a good personnel record and the township has been recognized as tops in Southern Ohio for fiscal management and lifestyle factors during his tenure. I don't recall seeing any disrespect of Mr. Bickford by any of his fellow township employees. The financial impact of his dismissal has exposed my township to an additional expense of up to $270,000. As an employer, I consider this to be plain stupid. As a taxpayer, I say it wasn't your right to blow taxpayer funds on your petty political egos. I challenge you to document, publish, and validate the process of how his replacement was hired. For the sake of your continued efforts towards claiming transparency, you owe this to taxpayers. Was this position advertised? How many candidates were interviewed? Was there a pre-planned list of qualifications shared among the 3 trustees to use as a benchmark for hiring? What was the timeline of the events? Will you publish all this process information as part of your transparency, as well as for energetic compliance with sunshine laws? This is my formal open records request on this entire employment activity. Mr. Work has only had 2 years previous paid experience in local government, and I read he was dismissed from that position. I question the entire process that resulted in his hiring to administer my township. In my opinion, vetting of this new employee was not done, or those hiring him already knew of his deficiencies and hired him anyway. Either case is damning and deserving of transparency. In business, we call this a bad hire. As a business owner, I would be pulling the individuals who made this hire on the carpet. Any amount of careful vetting would have exposed Mr. Work's previous rather large bankruptcy involving his several businesses. I'm providing a record copy today, since obviously the trustees bringing Mr. Work to us didn't either know or ignored this information. Who made this decision? The number of suppliers and friends or business associates left short by this bankruptcy is astounding. I know some of these people and the firms. Enormous credit card balances indicate a total lack of recognition of knowing when to quit digging. Even the state of Ohio's sales taxes collected and not forwarded to the state would disqualify him in a position within our township. Why wasn't this final candidate's qualifications presented in an open meeting to your taxpayers? Would they approve of someone with these qualifications handling their money? Should you be taking his guidance on township financial decisions? Will my property taxes be going up soon due to bad business decisions and practices embraced by the trustees? Will our financial reserves be diminished? Neighborhood people I've discussed this with are shocked and foresee very concerning financial issues. You need to admit in full disclosure to the totality of this bad hiring process. I'm calling for you to immediately terminate Mr. Warwick and start an honest and open process to hire a qualified and competent administrator to manage the day-to-day affairs of our township. I want answers.
What's this?
What you should have done. You've done your research. Thank you. There's nobody else on the list for public comment.
Okay, sheriff's report.
Let me just speak. Mr. Abraham's walking out the door, so I guess he didn't want to hear the response to the questions he raised. But for the record, Mr. Bickford resigned, and there is a severance agreement with him, and that is the township's official position. Mr. Warwick is eminently qualified, and I don't appreciate someone insulting one of our officials here in the township in a public meeting. Obviously, members of the public are entitled to their opinions, but if Mr. Abraham wanted a true dialogue, I don't think he would have walked out the door now. I'm happy to speak with him later if he's interested in doing that off the record. Thank you.
All right, sheriff report, pinch hitting for Lieutenant Smith, Corporal Eric Kidd.
Good evening. I have no report.
No report?
Lieutenant Smith will be back to work on Monday, June 8th,
Still in Florida, I guess.
somewhere.
You
Good for
stuck
him.
around, you stuck around all that time, thank you. Thank you very much.
Quick-
And thank
quick-
you for the service you guys have been doing. Great.
Yeah,
Good
just
work.
quick question. I know there were some rumors of activity headed for the mall during the unrest downtown this weekend, but we haven't actually seen any criminal activity around the mall from that, have we?
No, sir.
That's good.
No, sir.
You guys have been on alert there, I know, waiting in the parking lot and keeping an
Yes.
eye on things, so thank you.
With the EMS and fire report, Assistant Fire Chief, Jerry Cooper. Coop?
Good evening, everybody. Actually, I'm gonna keep this short. I don't have a report tonight. We did our COVID report update on Tuesday morning. Pretty much status quo from probably the last time Chief Penny forwarded any information, so that's where we stand right now, so. Unless you have any questions about it.
Chief, you had a fire earlier today, I think. I saw a bunch of, your guys all left, and then Blue Ash came down, Kenwood
We
as
did
well.
about 5 o'clock. We had a fire that was confined to a bedroom over on Beach. So I apologize for my tardiness getting here. There were some issues that I had to remain on the scene there, but yeah, there was nobody hurt, actually no structural damage. We got there quick and got it stopped, so. But yeah, that's about all I got. I'll keep, like I said, keep it short.
Very good, thank you.
Cooper, thank you.
Thank you.
Roads, maintenance, recreation report, our superintendent of roads, Tracy Kellums.
It's the only couple of things that I have since Tuesday. Just want to report document shredding is Saturday, June 20th, 10 to 2, and that will be here in the back parking lot. Other than that, we are moving forward with the trash bash in September. I've confirmed with Rumpke and all of our other contractors, except for one who was supposed to get back with me, so those will be done in September. I know I receive phone calls every week about when we're gonna schedule that, so citizens will be happy to hear that. So the only other thing I have is, want to bring up in the recreation report, I believe you have before you a list of nominees for the park board. I want to bring that list to you for approval. It's Ms. Kathy Kugler, J. Janice Jr., James C. Stanley, Christine Early, James T. Riley III, and Lisa Bass Hodge.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
I think we'd already discussed these candidates when Mr. Petty had
Yep.
mentioned them before, and I actually thought we had already approved them and realized we hadn't, and so I had asked Mr. Warwick about that, and we made sure we got it on the agenda tonight. Some of those committee members are here, I know. Mr. Janice is here, and Ms. Kugler is here. So pleased you guys are willing to serve as well.
Thank
But
you.
we didn't vote yet. We have to do that.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Now, congratulations.
That's all I have, sir.
Okay, planning and
Wait,
zoning.
sorry. You know I always have something to say. Tracy, you may not have seen this yet, but as Mr. Fortman was pointing out earlier, today the governor announced that on June 10th, playgrounds outdoors can open. Subject to whatever the order says, in case there are conditions in there, will you please get our playgrounds opened on June 10th?
June 10th.
Thank you.
Planning and zoning report, our zoning administrator, planning administrator, Skylar Milton.
Yes, sir. First item on the agenda is 7300 Quail Hollow. I believe it's supposed to be Drive. I'm going to show you guys a couple of pictures of the site. This is actually a redevelopment site. There was a pre-existing single-family home. The owner of the property has demolished the residential home there, is planning on building a newer, larger home on the same site. Unfortunately, due to personal logistics, as well as I think some delays based on weather and the COVID pandemic, what we're dealing with right now is an open hole from both the excavation and then the planned pouring of the new foundation. So I have some pictures here to kind of show the site. I know most of you have, or maybe even all of you, have been out to the site now. Let me see if I can. Well, technology's going to get the better of me here. Hang on one second.
While you're doing that, Skylar, I was out there this afternoon at 6 o'clock and met with Mr. Hart, who is, so he must be to the south of that property.
Yes.
And he tells me that this hole got dug originally, I think, in February. Is that correct? Yeah.
Approximately.
I'm Jim Hart's neighbor.
Yeah, okay. You live in the White House on the corner?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Would you mind coming up and giving us a little background on this?
What's your name and address?
Real quick, if I may, I'll kind of elaborate on the basics. There is an active building permit and zoning permit on this site. This hole has filled up numerous times. We've been working with the applicant and their contractor. We've had several issues with them being responsive on these issues on the site and actually draining the site. We're at this current time, we're being told that their contractors will be out on site any day now, but they've been telling us that now for about 3 weeks.
I got to tell you, this is the picture that I sent you, and I got to tell you,
it's actually a picture I took.
Is that right? So you and I were looking at the exact same thing.
Have the same exact
the erosion that's taking place here. This lady's getting ready to sell her house to another woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be in trouble with this house because
Yep.
there's way too much erosion for this.
Absolutely.
And this thing was full of
A week
water
ago.
not a week ago.
Yes.
The fence. A 3-year-old could get past that fence.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is a very dangerous situation, not just for the next door residents around there, but also for kids to get into that site completely.
And this is actually a replaced construction fence. This is actually better than what has been there for the last several months.
Less bad.
Just for the record,
It's less bad.
Less bad.
I
Yes.
walked around that.
Okay.
just for the record, we walked around the fence.
Any kid can get around it.
Yeah. Because there's actually no building here, there's really no setbacks or any issues from a purely zoning standpoint to enforce. The township does, however, have our property maintenance code, and my department has issued violations on this site pertaining to improper grading, soil and erosion controls, and talking about the issue further with Mr. Desai. We are actually going to follow up tomorrow morning with sections 108, 3, and 5, which are actually emergency standards for unsafe structures. And we're going out on a little bit of a limb, but the definition of a structure. We're saying that this is part of the foundation, part of the basement, because it's already excavated for that. If we do see any water filling up in there, I'm going to go ahead and use my authority in that capacity as the property maintenance official to just go out there and pump it ourselves. I think there's very limited liability there, but we would need a motion from the trustees to file for an emergency action through the courts.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Miller, do you mind if I'm sorry,
Oh.
you wanted to make a comment. I think Mr. Miller did a very nice job of explaining it, but I do want to walk through some of the particulars of the legalities of how we have to do things. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. Do what you need to do. My name's Robert Sartorelli at 6930 Michael Drive, just to the south of that. And I'm here basically with Mr. Hart, whom I believe you spoke to today. My concern is strictly, and it's already been mentioned, is the danger, the high risk with the essentially lack of fencing that's there for kids, pets. Actually, that neighbor's house right there, her dog fell into the hole when it was full of water the first time, and Sycamore Fire came and got her out, the dog, at about 1:30 in the morning, something like that. So there's already been an incident 2-3 months ago, I want to say. The house was demolished in October. No digging was done until February. And it took them about 3 weeks to get to this point, and it was neat and clean. But with all the rains, the spring rains we've had, you see the erosion there on the north end. So there's the danger standpoint, there's the health standpoint. I contacted Hamilton County about worrying about mosquitoes and that kind of control. They came and put anti-larval bricks in there in, I want to say March, I believe it was, but the property's been drained a couple of times since then, so certainly that's gone. Then of course there's the north wall that you see there that's coming, that's eroding away, and then lastly there's the issue with Mr. Hart, with what he sees there. There's the erosion from the giant hill back onto his property, and the aesthetics and whatnot. So that's basically the history.
I'd like to ask Mr. Desai if it's possible that under the emergency, if we have the ability to get a bulldozer and push all that dirt back in that hole. I mean, it's the only way to make that a safe site, because anything short of that is trouble. And I'm really concerned for the lady to the north who, I mean, the erosion that's taking place there now with no water in there, it's even going to be more erosion.
She has sold her home apparently. And I will say I saw the property owner today at lunchtime as I was walking my dog, and he claims that the work is going to begin on Monday. So we'll see. There's no way that will be dry enough to do anything in there, I don't think. But
I remember looking at this months ago, and I thought they were going to take care of it at that time. And it was a little bit, now it's gotten worse and worse, and then some pictures we saw a couple of weeks ago were, and that's a lovely neighborhood, and you have to look at, and we need to take care of this.
I might add, these are pictures from today.
These are today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was out there right after you, and while Schuyler was there, it looked like a deer had been wandering around down in there now, too.
I'm sorry?
There was a deer that had been wandering around in there, too. It looks like there were deer footprints.
we found deer trail on site today.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, that poor lady next door.
But he's always been, I'm getting ready to do it. I'm getting ready to fix it. Well, I'm getting ready to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, this is the quintessential, the checks in the mail. Again,
It's no different than what we experienced on Kugler Mill, by the way,
Yeah.
with that house that we're getting ready to knock down.
Okay, well, we all agree there's a problem,
We're
I
getting
think,
to it.
and
We're
it's
gonna
9
get to
o'clock.
it.
What can we do?
Yeah. So I would like to know, do we have the ability to, under emergency, to get a bulldozer and push that dirt back in that hole?
No.
No?
Yep.
Okay.
And we did discuss that this week. How far do our emergency powers extend? That was the reason that I'm recommending a motion to pursue an emergency action through the courts.
Yeah, so Mr. Miller and I laid out a game plan. First off, he is going to issue a notice of violation tomorrow that is different than the notice of violation that was issued previously in May. This notice of violation is specifically going to follow Part 108 of our maintenance code, which is dangerous structure or premises. Premises being the key here. And he is going to start that process rolling to get it teed up. Under the emergency procedures, which are in Part 109, he has the ability, based on the interpretation we have of the project, as he explained, to go in there under 109.2, which says, notwithstanding other provisions of this code, whenever, in the opinion of the code official, and if you will recall, Resolution 2011-109 was passed, and it said any time the maintenance code referred to code official, it's zoning administrator. And in the opinion of the code official, there is imminent danger due to an unsafe condition. The code official shall order the necessary work to be done, including the boarding up of openings to render such structure temporarily safe, whether or not the legal procedure herein described has been instituted, and shall cause such other action to be taken as the code official deems necessary to meet such emergency. So it's a three-tier plan. First, a new set of violations noticed under 108, which are dangerous structure or premises, because we clearly have dangerous premises here. Under 109, the ability to go in and put up any fencing that would be necessary, drain any water that would be necessary from the hole. And number 3, as he has mentioned, looking for a motion from the trustees. We don't need it on the first 2 things I discussed. That's within the authority of the zoning administrator. But on the third piece, looking for a motion from the trustees to authorize the law director to file a complaint and a motion for a temporary restraining order with the court next week, whereby the township is allowed to go in and fill the hole. So again, under 108, Mr. Miller is going to issue violations for the dangerous premises. Under 109, he's going to go in and immediately pump any water that may be there and solidify the fencing. And number 3, we need a motion from the trustees to allow me to go into court to ask the court for an emergency order allowing us to fill the hole.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we authorize our law director to file for a temporary restraining order to go into court and fill that hole.
Second.
And if I could ask you to add to that and address any other erosion issues.
And address any other erosion issues.
Second it.
Okay. Question, if I may, as to this. Just looking further in here, the emergency repair section in 109.4, is that something that can occur immediately, and is that limited to a structure or to the premises? Because could we put a shoring wall in there, maybe?
And you've hit on the concern. I would feel more comfortable getting an order from the court.
How quickly do you anticipate that process to happen in the current environment?
For things of this nature, the courts are still there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would anticipate we would file something on Tuesday, and I would ask the court to have it teed up by Thursday, so that we would have an order in hand at the end of the day, Thursday or Friday morning.
That brings up another question then. We have the motion to proceed no matter what, essentially, as framed here. What if the contractor actually does start work Monday? We'd be voting to have you go to court anyway. Would we need to do that, or should we include a contingency in our motion?
I mean, I'm going to be practical. By the grace of God, I'm not lacking for any work. So this is something I'm going to work on over the weekend, and I'd prefer not to if I didn't have to. But if we get to a point where the problem goes away, it goes away, and we're done.
Okay, well, let me suggest or move that we amend the motion before us then to include a contingency that if the planning and zoning director or township administrator informs you that the problem has gone away, you will put a hold on filing the motion.
Or stop wherever I'm at. in the
Or stop where you
process.
are, yeah.
I'll agree to amend my motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor for the law director to seek an emergency order from the court to fill the hole, address other erosion problems, with the caveat that if the township administrator or the zoning administrator inform the law director it's no longer necessary, I'll stop.
Correct.
Okay.
If necessary, I second the amended motion if that was.
So for discussion purposes, can I just suggest we have some kind of time limit on this, because we've seen these in the township for a lot of years. Oh yeah, I'm gonna get to it next week. Oh yeah, I got the crew coming in next week. 2 months later, it's still, nothing's done, and we still got an issue. So, I'm more, I think we have to, at some point we gotta say, we've gotta just do this, and it doesn't really matter whether the guy says he's gonna come to work tomorrow or not.
Oh, yeah, that's not what I meant. I just didn't want to leave an open-ended motion technically ordering Mr. Desai to file it anyway if it's no longer needed.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
I just want to be clear with that. and
I
Skylar
would
be-
say.
I know Skylar will be on
yeah,
top of it.
So my trigger for contacting Mr. Desai will be when I see construction crews on site doing, having substantial commencement of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm just thinking
Stabilize
like
the
a lawyer
site,
trying to dot all
form-
the i's here.
Form up the foundation. Yeah.
And procedurally, I think Mr. Weedman did the amended motion, so I still think we need a second
We
for
do
that.
second.
Yeah.
No.
So we would give him like 30 days to do this, to get this going? You're gonna put a time frame on
I'm gonna ask for immediate relief.
it? Immediate. Okay.
We already have active violations on the site based on other components of the property maintenance code.
Mr. Stoneman, did the health department, has they been involved in this? Haven't they come out to check this out?
Not to my knowledge. It was the folks that came and put the anti-larval in initially, and again, I want to say in March, was Hamilton County Water. And
Soil and water.
yes,
Yeah. So our conservation.
but not Health Department. Unless Mr. Hart's contacted, but I don't know that.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right. The other item I have is the.
Did you have any other comments, Mr. Sotarelli?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can get that resolved for you.
Thank you.
And we will continue to reach out to Mr. Hart on updates so that he can update the rest of the community.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
And would Mr. Keiss, the property owner, be in the mix, being notified, or? I'm just curious.
Is that to the north?
He's the owner, yeah.
Oh, you
The
mean
owner
the
of the
owner?
site.
Oh, the guy with the hole.
Yeah,
Yeah, he'll be
we're
notified.
we're in constant contact with him.
Okay,
Yep.
excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good night. Okay, at Tuesday's meeting, the township staff was directed to provide the trustees with a resolution to proceed with the master site plan for the Montgomery Road properties. Let's see here. Let me pull this up for you. Just very quickly before I read this, so this is a breakdown of the costs that are associated with this proposal. The market analysis will be performed by Market Matrix Metrics LLC. That's a total of $9,000. The focus group meetings, which are $1,200 each. So there's 3 focus group meetings, followed by the master plan charrette at $8,500. After discussing this with the township administrator, we decided to round this up instead of leaving it at $21,100. We were thinking there may be additional plan options, something that we may request additionally of the consultant. So we've rounded this up to $25,000 with the $3,900 contingency. So the proposal Actual costs are $21,100. So, any questions before I read this?
The focus groups that we're envisioning in here, and I want there to be as much public input as possible here, and I know the plan is we'll be inviting some people to the focus groups, but are we going to be excluding anyone who may want to observe or participate at that stage and letting them participate at the assurance? That's a question I ran for office on and just got elected on. Maybe one of the other trustees can answer that.
I also questioned it when I ran in 2017, so.
I think the acquisition of these properties was in anticipation that that would be incorporated into the bigger piece so that we had the ability for access management. That was what the original purpose of all of this was for. And to take pressure off of the intersection of Kenwood and Montgomery Road, which we all know is probably the biggest problem we have from an access management standpoint. So this property was all assembled so that we had the ability, knowing that we would develop something on the property that wasn't used for access management, certainly. Originally, I think there was a discussion about when those houses became available on the south side of Orchard Lane, and the fact that I think we bought them for a pretty decent price. We bought those in anticipation that we may want to use that strip of those 12 houses on the south side of Orchard Lane for some kind of transitional use in the event that we had something significant go onto the property on Montgomery Road. So in good planning always says you want to have a transitional use. You don't want to just stick. I mean, to be honest with you, we made a mistake when we did, what's the one just south of there? Redstone, where we approved the plan and the parking garage, I mean, you can almost stand there and hand somebody a beer on their deck because it's so close. And that's really not good planning. And so the thought process was, if we had these houses that were available, that we would use that as a transitional use to get from single-family housing on the north side of Orchard Lane to the more intense use along Montgomery Road. So that was the thought process when we bought them, and we bought them for a pretty reasonable price. That's why we bought them.
Would you sell them for what you paid for them?
I guess it depends on what the SHRED comes up with, and to try to determine whether these are of value for a transitional use or not. I mean, that's what we originally bought them for, knowing that we were going to put an access management plan through that property somehow, and the rest of it was going to be developed into a more intense use. So that's the reason why we originally acquired. I mean, depending upon what the SHRED comes up with, we may very well be interested in doing that. But we have to wait and see, go through this process first.
Yeah, part of why we want to do the process here too, and thank you for the explanation, Tom, is that is basically prime property. I mean, it's one of the best properties in Hamilton County for something, and we want to make sure the right thing that fits our township is there, and that's why we want to go through this process, because we trustees aren't real estate developers. We don't know what the best use is, and we don't necessarily have the most original ideas for what could be there. So this is an opportunity for the public and developers and other interested parties to pitch their visions for what should be there, and they may be wildly competing ideas. There may be, a Disney-type palace there, or fancy apartments, or offices, or hotels, or single-family homes, or another gas station, or a prettier Taco Bell. Who knows? That's what this process is for, to get these ideas so that we can decide what seems to be the best vision for it, because for better or for worse, we taxpayers ended up spending a lot of money assembling all these properties into a big parcel. So let's do something good with it.
I just might add that we used tax increment financing funds, so that didn't really come out of the general fund to buy into these properties. I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, they were all purchased with TIF, and so this has not in any way created a problem for our operating budget, because those are restricted funds, and we were able to use TIF to purchase those properties. So.
And I wasn't suggesting it created a problem for taxpayer funds, but it was taxpayer funds used to purchase it out of TIF money.
Tax increment finance funds. Yes.
Bucketed in a TIF. So anyway, thanks.
Ready to read? All right. Resolution authorizing the administrator to enter into contracts for master site planning services for Montgomery Road Properties project, dispensing with the second reading and declaring an emergency.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's move Mr. Porter.
Mr. LaBarber.
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Tyler?
Okay, that's actually all I have for my section tonight.
All right,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? I don't want to prolong this
No, that's
meeting any
fine. Yes, sir.
longer, but we had some discussion in the workshop the other day, I know, about the Myers-Cooper project there,
Mhm.
catty corner from Jewish Hospital, and I think there may have been some more communications afterward, have there, or something else going on? Can you
There-
update us?
There have been more communications with the project owner, site owner. We have seen improvements on the site. Their landscaper was out there. I have been out to take pictures. Have not had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Desai and Mr. Work about it in detail to determine, how close they are to satisfactory compliance with our conditions.
Well, I won't put you on the spot then if you're not ready yet to
No,
discuss
that's fine.
it, so.
But there has been some movement on the site. We have not issued any other permits on the site, and at this time we're still holding all those. There is one other tenant in there that could potentially receive a certificate of occupancy from Hamilton County Building Department. I hope that doesn't happen, but as we're told by the county, that's outside of our control at this point in time. There are some discussions on that front as well about our contract with Hamilton County in that regard.
Okay, and for the public's reference, if anyone didn't watch our workshop the other morning where we discussed this, the county got ahead of us. We attached some conditions for zoning. A prior board had approved zoning for that project and put several conditions on it before anyone would occupy it, and the county didn't wait for the township to issue a certificate indicating that those conditions had been complied with, and they hadn't yet. And so someone moved in because the county let them, and so that's a bit at cross purposes with the purpose of putting conditions on these things, and that's what this relates to, so that's all still in the works.
Yes, sir.
And some of the neighbors are still concerned about this. Law Director, Deepak Desai,
Nothing to report, sir.
and our Administrator, Greg Ward, with
All I have is a large purchase order, which is for our audit that's required by the state of Ohio. The audit is running a little bit late because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and so they have started work on it, and so we did not issue the PO at the time that the contract was put in place, so I'm asking for approval for this purchase order for $13,750 payable to the Auditor of State.
Motion to approve.
second. Discussion? Mr. Porter?
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Fiscal Officer, Rob Porter, report communications.
I have no communications tonight.
Trustee comments? Mr. Weedman?
I do have a few comments, though. As we just approved the audit, I just wanted to point out, to address one of Mr. Janis's comments about the forensic audit. The township the trustees aren't authorized to do a forensic audit, and that was part of the point I made. I was trying to make in the workshop. The only person that can audit the township is the Auditor of State, and they're going to do it. I'm sure they'll do a very thorough job, and I welcome their audit, and I'm not afraid of anything. So that's to address that aspect. The other thing is Mr. Abramson did make some good comments, I thought. The hiring of the administrator was highly irregular. I've been here for the hiring of approximately maybe 9 administrators, and they've always been brought in for interview with all the trustees. They've been vetted. They've been, we've had numerous resumes that were reviewed, got references. None of that happened in the case of the hiring of this administrator. It happened with the hiring of Skylar, who I think is a very good employee, and but everyone was involved in the review of multiple resumes, not just him. There were multiple candidates, and I think you made a good hire with Skylar. As Jim LaBarbera has frequently mentioned, he's said that we should have performance reviews regularly of our employees, and I'd like to see you implement that. Another thing that has always been done in the past is whenever we've hired people of management type positions, that they've been a probationary employee for approximately 6 months or so, and then reviewed, and their performance analyzed. I think that should be done in the case with our recent hires. As I say, I think Skylar's done a good job, but I think he's should be reviewed, and I in fact urge you to continue in his employment. But I think that should apply to all our senior management. As Mr. LaBarbera pointed out, we should review our employees and put those reviews in their records. Thank you.
Trustee comments?
Yeah,
Mr. Weidman.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to let everybody know that I've been working closely with some of the legislators regarding an amendment to SB 310, and I don't know if you know what SB 310 is, but that is the bill that was passed in the Senate. I think it went to it may have gotten passed in the House today. It's going back to the Senate just for some minor changes. But SB 310 is taking the first $350 million from the federal government the state is going to distribute to the 88 different counties using the 2019 local government fund formula. So there's been a move through with a number of townships to put an amendment together to SB 310. And I've been working with the legislators on that. And let me just read the synopsis quickly. It authorizes municipalities and townships to temporarily divert payments in lieu of taxes the subdivision received from a tax increment financing project and use the diverted money to fund any public safety and road and bridge maintenance expenses that are not eligible to be funded with the Federal CARES Act funding. Expenses not directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Requires subdivisions to reimburse those diverted TIF funds before the TIF expires, but only to the extent the subdivision receives federal funds that may be used to pay such expenses. So in other words, we would borrow money from our TIF fund to use it for public safety and for road expenses, and we would be able to use those restricted funds and only be obligated to pay them back to the TIF prior to its expiration if we receive funds from the federal government to do so, which allows us to use what we were just talking about, TIF funds and how they're restricted, would allow us to open up some of the restrictions on using some of those funds for something other than what they're currently designated for now. The diversion in the subdivision's fiscal year ending in 2020 may be up to 25% of the balance on hand on the bill's effective date, plus 25% of additional collections during that fiscal year, while the diversion fiscal year ending in 2021 may be up to 25% of the balance on hand on the first day of that fiscal year, plus 25% of additional collections during that fiscal year. So it is a push. Some of you may know I'm president of Hamilton County Township Association, and I've gotten a lot of push from other townships to get this amendment through in the State House and the State Senate. I'm told that the governor is willing to sign it if the House and the Senate can come to an agreement of language. I would suggest that we prepare a letter to our legislators in support of this amendment that would be a significant financial help to our township. So I trust you all would probably agree that that would be
Mr. Bill
beneficial.
Seitz, Bill Seitz, working on this.
Seitz is in the House and Blessing in the Senate.
Most likely, but I'd like to read the bill first. Which House bill is it, by the way?
So it's an amendment. I'm happy to forward you a
Yeah,
copy
please
of the
do,
amendment.
yeah.
The only other thing I have, as you know, the elective surgeries are back and picking up daily in Hamilton County. The Oxford Blood Center is in need of all types of blood, A, B, and O. They're also continuing to seek plasma donations from people that have been confirmed to have had COVID-19 so they can harvest the antibodies for treatment of seriously ill patients with the virus. For those interested in helping, please call Oxford Blood Center at 513-451-0910. And that's all I have this evening. Although I would like to, I see we have an executive session for the purposes of ongoing litigation. I would like to add to that an executive session for the purposes of personnel as well. And that's all I have.
Tom?
Yeah, a few things here. First of all, just a reminder to anyone in the public, if you haven't responded to the census yet, do that, please. It matters for us to get an accurate count for Sycamore Township, certainly, as to our population. Ask your neighbors, hey, did you respond to the census yet? They may not have. The original deadline was pushed out a little, but many people still haven't responded. We have a pretty good response rate for Sycamore Township, but it's important to do that. To address some of the other comments here, though, Mr. Porter, you have your statutory duties as fiscal officer. You do a very nice job as to them, and you have your own domain there as to what you do as fiscal officer. Your responsibilities including paying the township's bills, making sure the money's coming in and that it's accounted for and so forth. But frankly, you're incorrect to say trustees aren't authorized to do a forensic audit if they wanted to. We are responsible for setting the budget for the township and determining where the money goes and what the proper uses are for it. And if we want to look back at prior numbers independently of your office, we can certainly authorize that outside of your office. We just can't order you to do it. But we could certainly do that if we needed to. I'm not suggesting that needs to happen now, but we do have the authority to manage what the township does as well.
I suggest you review the handbook. It clearly says that you do not have that power.
We don't have the power to order you to do it. We could commission an outside audit if we
can
wish.
argue about that.
Yeah, but anyway, the trustees are the ones with the ultimate responsibility as to where the money is supposed to go, as opposed to how it is spent and dispensed, which is your office.
I agree. I have no authority to raise any money or spend any money.
Right.
That's your
Yeah.
prerogative.
And I'm not criticizing.
And for 30 years, I've stayed out of your
Right.
business that way. So.
And I'm not criticizing how you're running your office either, but I do want to make
Thank
that
you.
point that if we trustees do want to take a look back, because I'm curious as to things that have happened in the past with township money and where some of it's gone and why some of it's gone to certain places and why suddenly more of it suddenly went to some places, and I may want to see an audit as to that if it's not clear from the township's records, and those would be things you don't even know about. But the trustees may, or it may be in the trustee records. So I wanted to make that point. Now, there have been comments tonight from Mr. Abraham, who was rather harsh and biting in his comments and dropped a packet here for us and then walked out the door before anyone could respond. I made some comments earlier about Mr. Warwick, and I stand behind my confidence in him as township administrator. As some of you here know, I ran for office on a platform of changing the culture in Sycamore Township as to how things were run. Mr. Bickford was administrator for quite some time, and he was part of that culture. Mr. Bickford, according to his severance agreement with the township, resigned. But I will tell you, I had some conversations with Mr. Bickford before taking office, before I was in office, and before I was subject to public records laws and so forth, as a matter of fact, too. But one of the things I learned from Mr. Bickford himself is that he was told by prior boards of trustees to cut out my colleague, Jim LaBarbera, from what was going on in the township and to not keep him informed as to things that were going in the township and to not invite him to planned events or to disinvite him from some of them. And frankly, that is inappropriate and why it is refreshing to have a sudden and very different change in the township administrator. Mr. Warwick is very skilled at what he does. He has come in the past to townships, Hamilton Township, when change was necessary and accomplished it very ably. He is digging into what has been going on in the past in Sycamore Township so that I can have an understanding of that and so that Mr. LaBarbera can. I will tell you that I have instructed Mr. Warwick from the start, before I ever thought it was a good idea to hire him, that he should treat each of us 3 trustees equally. The fact that the culture has changed and what may be the perceived majority here has changed doesn't mean Mr. Weedman should be excluded from anything or from any information. And I have told him that he should be kept in the loop, as should Mr. LaBarbera and as should I. We should be treated equally. His job is to administer the township on behalf of the taxpayers of the township and the voters of the township. We are the board who oversees what he does, but we hired him for that purpose, and I have great confidence in him. Mr. Porter is correct, however. Employees should be subject to review, always, not just after 6 months, but all the time. Any township employee should be subject to review, and if their performance is wanting or failing, then the township needs to be able to make a change and should make a change. And that means the township shouldn't, through its boards of trustees, handicap future boards of trustees with contracts for township employees with golden handcuffs and golden parachutes in them, which makes it incredibly expensive when a change does need to occur or does occur. Mr. Bickford did have one such contract, and as Mr. Abraham noted, it was expensive when he left, but it was always going to be expensive when he left, whether it was now or later, because of the way the contract was worded and the buyouts required in it. It's inappropriate to have contracts like that for township employees because it makes it expensive and difficult to make a change when a review might show it's needed or some other thing shows it's needed or someone resigns. I've made that point before. I've discussed Mr. Bickford's contract in particular before. My plan is we're not doing contracts like that anymore. Mr. Warwick doesn't have a contract like that. If we do need to make a change, we can make one. But despite the muck that Mr. Abraham was spreading earlier, I have complete confidence in Mr. Warwick's good sense and financial wherewithal, and I stand behind him. If, on the other hand, in some future review, I learn that's incorrect, I won't hesitate to make a change. But I thought it was important to make that point. So, and thank you for sitting there through all of that, Mr. Warwick. Those are my comments. Thank you.
I'll just add that Mr. Porter, when I became a trustee, I went back and looked at the performance reviews of a number of our people who work in the township, went through there, and it was 7 years was the closest one that I saw with a written performance, and many up to 17 years and longer. So I did say, let's get written work reviews on a yearly basis.
I think that's a good idea.
Just so you know, you've been around for 30 years in the township, and you stood by and let that go. But that's not my
duty.
No, it's not
That's
your duty.
your
But you didn't call it to anybody's attention.
Well, I'm calling it to your attention
yes.
now.
And it will be taken care of. We'll handle this the way we've handled other things in the township. I also support Mr. Warwick 100%, and I thought that was But anybody can say whatever they want to say. You can say whatever you want to say. I liked the reference to American Pie because it's one of my all-time favorite songs. It was the death of Buddy Holly, my all-time favorite singer, and Richie Valens and Big Bopper, and I did a whole half-hour special on that one song. So that meant a lot to me. So I appreciate her saying that. Okay, we need to. Looking at the calendar, announcement changes, documents ready.
Before you go to that, can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Mr. James talks about the contract we had with Mr. Bickford. We entered into a contract with Mr. Bickford because we wanted to retain his services. We did not want to let him go. There were 4 ways he could leave. He could quit, and we wouldn't owe him a penny. He could retire, and we wouldn't owe him a penny. He could be dismissed for cause. We wouldn't owe him a penny. In this case, Mr. Bickford was released, terminated, or however Mr. James would like to put it. He was let go with no cause, and that was the only thing that would kick in that contract. So when he tells you that it was at our fault that we entered into that contract, we entered into that contract hoping that guy would stay here and retire from Sycamore Township. We didn't want him to leave. That's why we entered into a contract with him. And I might add that there of the 12 townships in Sycamore Township in Hamilton County, probably half of those people have contracts. Just so you know. So, and the last thing I will add is that as of this year, under the formula that he was being paid, he would have been the lowest paid administrator in Hamilton County. So I will leave it at that. I want to clarify that because oftentimes we hear Mr. James suggest that we entered into a bad deal. We entered into a great deal with Greg Bickford. He was a great employee. He was our best employee. And for him to suggest anything short of that is, I want to correct the record. So I'm all done with that.
Then I need to correct the record as well. I was not suggesting Mr. Bickford was not a very good employee for the township, but I stand by my other comments. And as to the contract, it in fact did require a buyout with retirement. If someone were fired for cause, as defined in the contract, correct, the buyout didn't have to happen. But the way cause was defined in the contract was so narrow, and it gave a 30-day cure period for whatever the cause was, that it was practically meaningless. So anyway, happy to discuss it outside of the meeting with anyone who has questions, or send me an email. But this has been a long meeting, and we have more to do in executive session.
And that wasn't the only contract that was entered into that way with perpetual contract that went on forever and ever and ever.
And I'm sorry, I would add, I did review the other township administrator contracts from around the county, by the way, as well. And in fact, the severance periods were significantly shorter in almost every one of them. So, thank you.
May I comment on the non-agenda item about the executive session Mr. Weedman made? I believe there are 9 exceptions or allowances for executive session for personnel. One of those 9 must be included. He said for personnel. He did not list the specific reason. My other comment is, I believe, since it was a non-agenda item, based on what it talks about here, the only other executive session, none of you took a roll call vote for his.
We haven't moved to go into executive session yet.
I'm not done yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but thank you, but we have not moved to go into session yet. So.
That's all my comments. I mean, nothing else. Okay, announcement changes, document shredding for residents, as Mr. Cullums noted, June 20th, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., parking lot behind the building here. And trash bash you mentioned coming up in September. We're getting more information on that as we move along. Our next trustee workshop meeting is on June 16th at 9 o'clock. And for other scheduled items that we have in the township, you can check our website. And I move now to, we need a motion to enter into an executive session to discuss ongoing litigation as permitted by the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G. Can we, do we?
Second.
Deepak, what's the protocol? Because he just mentioned personnel. So can we combine the two, or do we have to do those separate?
No, you can combine the two, but, and I'm sure Mr. Weedman was going to be more specific when we got to the executive session part of the agenda, but we do want to state whether or not it's to consider the employment, discipline, compensation of a public employee or official.
Okay. So I would like to enter in for discipline of a public employee.
Okay, so we're gonna enter into an executive session to discuss ongoing litigation as permitted by the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22. We're also going to discuss personnel discipline.
Discipline of a public employee.
Discipline of a public employee.
Second.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Yeah, second.
And I would like to invite the following people to join the trustees in this executive session. Rod Porter, Deepak Desai, Scott Solman, Ray Warwick, Tracy Kellums, Skylar Miller, and the trustees.
And we need a vote?
And we're going to adjourn this part of our meeting.
We have to vote on it first, Jim.
Okay, yeah.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Okay, and the time, mark the time at 9:43. And we will We're out of executive session. It is now 10:26.
Sorry.
Mr. James?
I have to remember the motion now. Okay. I move that we authorize.
Do you guys have to move to come back into
Oh, that-
regular session?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Move we return to regular session.
10:27.
Second.
10:27, we're now coming back into our regular meeting schedule, leaving executive session. We have a motion?
You have a motion and a second already.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Who wrote the motion down?
Mr. James, you have the motion?
If I recall. I move that we authorize expending up to $5,000 to retain Geis Consulting Ltd. To provide consulting services in relation to a potential TIF in the township.
Pending litigation.
And pending
Settlement for pending
for settlement of pending
Second.
litigation.
Mr. LaBarber?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, it's now
All in favor?
10:28.
Aye. We're supposed to
Aye.
vote on adjourning.
Motion to adjourn, aye.
Tracy, did I blind you? I'm sorry.